Chapter 1539. Under the horrified eyes of everyone, this incomparably powerful scepter was shattered inch by inch under the pressure of Yi Shiwen's finger. The scepter shattered inch by inch, and the kingdom of the underworld emperor that had manifested on the scepter also crumbled bit by bit. Countless resentful souls screamed and turned into a cloud of green smoke. The whole scene looked extremely shocking. The speed of the scepter's collapse was too fast. In almost a moment, it had already spread to the body of the underworld emperor. The underworld emperor seemed to have exhausted the last trace of his strength. Under Yi Shiwen's finger, it collapsed with a loud bang, turned into a cloud of green smoke, and disappeared between heaven and earth. Puff! The underworld emperor was broken, and Jagu directly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was like a kite with a broken string. He was hit by Yi Shiwen's finger and crashed into a wall on the spot. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Yi Shiwen in horror. He could only feel that the vitality in his body was rapidly flowing away. It was like a river that had rushed into the sea and couldn't return. It was crazily flowing out of his body. He wanted to stop it, but he could not raise his spirit at all. He could only watch as his vitality was flowing away. He lowered his head and looked at the big hole in his chest. His Zhen Yuan had long been infused into the phantom of the Emperor of the Underworld. At this time, he was completely unable to raise any defensive aura shield. He could only helplessly watch as Yi Shiwen's finger pierced his chest and pierced through his chest, but there was nothing he could do. He looked at Yi Shiwen again, and the scene in front of him was a little blurred. He was unwilling. He was the peerless genius of the Jiagu clan, and he had the hope of competing for the position of the Jiagu clan's patriarch in the future. But now, he was going to die here. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. He never thought that he would die in the hands of a person he had never cared about before. He looked at Yi Shiwen with a look of disbelief in his eyes. He knew very well that although he had consumed all of his Zhen Yuan, Yi Shiwen's consumption of Zhen Yuan was 100% higher than his. However, he had exhausted all of his Zhen Yuan, while Yi Shiwen had only shown signs of exhaustion. So, Yi Shiwen definitely still had the power to fight. How was this possible? Was he a monster? It should be known that he was a 7th-layer celestial realm martial artist who had sealed his cultivation. Although his cultivation was sealed, his true essence was not sealed, far surpassing ordinary 6th-layer celestial realm martial artists, and he was only a 3rd-layer celestial realm martial artist. If that was the case, who in the same realm could compare to him in terms of Zhen Yuan? At this moment, he realized that he was wrong. Fighting a battle of attrition and a battle of attrition was a very stupid decision in itself. Just now, Beishanju had already realized this point, but he didn't. Only now did he realize it, but it was already too late. More and more such thoughts appeared in his mind, but the Yi Shiwen in front of him was getting more and more blurry, until he directly stopped breathing on the spot. Without the obstruction of Jigu Jingshu, Yi Shiwen immediately took back the fight character. Although he was confident that these people did not have the guts to come and fight for it, it was very likely that some people would come and snatch it after a long time. He waved his hand, and the old ghost seemed to be attracted by something. He grabbed it on the spot and crushed it with his palm. You actually dared to kill him. Beishanju looked at Yi Shiwen in horror. He had a look of disbelief on his face. Jiegu Jingshua's death was a huge blow to him. Even a Heaven's Pride expert of his status and strength had been killed by Yi Shiwen without the slightest hesitation. Didn't that mean that Yi Shiwen could also kill him like this? At this time, the serious injuries on his body from Yi Shiwen had also recovered a little. However, in such a short time, there was no way for him to recover to his peak state. Go! Let's attack together and avenge the young master. At this time, the masters who had been seriously injured by the aftermath of the battle rushed towards Yi Shiwen one after another. Yi Shiwen sneered and directly slashed out sword aura that filled the sky. These masters who rushed towards Yi Shiwen were killed on the spot. They were not Yi Shiwen's match at all, and their bodies exploded on the spot. Elixirs, magic treasures, and Taoist books all burst out at once. Even their spatial rings were destroyed on the spot by Yi Shiwen's sword. Then, Yi Shiwen directly grabbed all of them in his hand. When Beishan Ju saw this scene, his eyes were wide open. He was almost scared to death. Now that both sides were dead, he was the only one left. Damn it, why am I so unlucky to meet such a monster? He watched helplessly as his own team was destroyed, and then Jiagu Jingshua's team. The two teams made up of masters could protect themselves in any situation, but they were defeated by Yi Shiwen. And most importantly, Yi Shiwen had fought 2 battles in a row, but he was still full of vigor and did not look tired at all. This made Beishan Ju abnormally frightened. Such a person with such high strength and similarly vigorous qi was simply an unparalleled monster. At this time, his first reaction was to escape. He suddenly took a step forward, turned into a stream of light, and fled into the sky. Yi Shiwen was about to chase after him, but suddenly, he heard a terrifying roar in the sky. A big hand grabbed out from the void, and Beishan Ju immediately screamed in pain. He was directly grabbed by this big hand, and he had no strength to fight back. Then, he was forcibly grabbed into a mass of blood mist, which was then absorbed by this big hand. What is that? Someone looked at the big hand in the void in front of him dumbfoundedly, feeling a little scared. What kind of person was Beishan Ju? With his cultivation, even if he was not Yi Shiwen's match, and even if he had been stripped of his 7-colored treasured clothes, he was still the most terrifying person. He was the person that should not be provoked. But now, Beishan Ju was directly grabbed by this big hand, and then exploded into a mass of blood mist, which was absorbed. This scene gave them a very shocking feeling, and they were almost scared to death. This was simply like the most terrifying miracle. They had never thought that they would see such a terrifying scene. Moreover, unknown danger was the most terrifying, and it shocked them even more than Yi Shiwen. F***CK. How did this zombie chase us here? Yi Shiwen looked at the big hairy hand and knew that it must be the zombie that 5 Elements Supreme had turned into after he passed away. How powerful was 5 Elements Supreme when he was alive? Even if he turned into a zombie after his death, he would still be the source of calamity. Perhaps the fresh blood had attracted this zombie. No matter what the reason was, he could not stay here any longer. He immediately grabbed Jiagu Jingshua's corpse, and the demon wings on his back spread out on the spot. In the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared from this side of the world. At the same time, Yi Shiwen clearly saw a huge figure wreaking havoc behind him. It was like the most terrifying monster in the shadows, and screams were constantly coming out. Some people who could not escape in time became food in the stomach of this zombie. They were not a match for this ferocious creature that had used the law of heaven and earth to become extremely huge. At this time, everyone remembered why Yi Shiwen had run away as soon as he saw this zombie. It was obvious that he had already encountered the zombie once, but he hadn't told them about it. One after another, they ran away while cursing loudly. They wished that they could curse Yi Shiwen's 18 generations of ancestors. But it was still useless. Under the strangulation of this zombie, blood flowed like a river, and corpses were everywhere. This zombie did not hold back at all. It seemed to be extremely angry with these uninvited guests who broke into its cave residence. These had nothing to do with Yi Shiwen for the time being. With these people holding back this zombie, Yi Shiwen escaped smoothly. At this time, he had time to check Jiagu Jingshua's wealth. After erasing the restriction on his space ring, Yi Shiwen immediately explored it with his spirit. At this time, he could not help but sigh. Jiagu Jingshua was indeed a famous young genius of the Jiagu clan for many years. His wealth was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. There were 5 spirit crystal mineral veins alone. The remaining scattered spirit crystals added up to 5 spirit crystal mineral veins. In other words, he had more than 100 billion in wealth, not to mention all kinds of elixirs, magic weapons, and so on. But what really made him overjoyed was that he found the cultivation method of netherworld ghost flame magic power in the spatial ring. This made him feel as if a lottery had suddenly fallen from the sky. One must know, in order to prevent their own martial arts practice from being leaked to outsiders, they often chose to memorize it in their mind. And for truth-level martial artists, their brain was like a super optical computer. They would never forget what they had read, so it was often the most difficult to find this kind of martial arts secret book. He could find the secret of 5 Elements Supreme in this cave residence because this was the cave residence of 5 Elements Supreme. Was there a safer place than this? If it was useless to hide here, then it was useless to hide anywhere else. Even the nest was destroyed, then everything would be meaningless. But now, very few people would carry martial arts with them. This might be obtained by others. From this, it could be seen how confident Jegu Jingshua was. He was confident that he would never be defeated by others. Unexpectedly, he was defeated by Yi Shiwen in the end. Even the Netherworld Ghost Flame Divine Technique fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. Moreover, this Netherworld Ghost Flame Divine Technique was not an ordinary rubbing version. There were insights and cultivation methods left by the ancestors. If he could comprehend it from time to time, the Netherworld Ghost Flame Divine Technique could also improve rapidly. This was the fundamental reason why Jegu Jingshua kept this version of the Netherworld Ghost Flame Divine Technique with him. Otherwise, he would have burned it long ago. Chapter 1540. But now, Yi Shiwen had benefited from all of these. Yi Shiwen really wanted to have time to comprehend the Netherworld Ghost Flame Divine Technique. He also needed time to refine the 7-color treasure robe. All of these required time. Moreover, he had obtained a total of 110 spirit crystal mineral veins this time. It would take him some time to digest them. For him, piling up spirit crystals was of no value. Only using them on himself would be of value. These 110 small spirit crystal mineral veins were enough to make his strength skyrocket. Of course, the premise was that he needed some time to digest them. Time. For ordinary people, time was the last thing they lacked. But for Yi Shiwen, time was the most important thing. His top priority now was to find Feng Qi, who was among them. He didn't know how far the competition had progressed. At the same time, he had to avoid the zombie of 5 Elements Supreme who was constantly harassing him from behind. Once he was targeted by the zombie, he would be doomed. The scene was chaotic. As more and more rooms were discovered, the treasures inside caused many people to start fighting crazily in order to seize the treasures inside. Furthermore, there were some who had already heard that a zombie had appeared in this cave. Moreover, it was extremely terrifying and unstoppable. However, due to the greed in their hearts, no one wanted to give up so easily before they actually encountered the zombie and knew how terrifying it was. In such a chaotic situation, Yi Shiwen shuttled back and forth in this well-connected cave mansion. Several times, he almost encountered the zombie that was scurrying around in all directions. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen was particularly sensitive to auras, so he was always able to discover this zombie one step ahead and avoid it in advance. However, other people weren't so lucky. Almost everywhere this zombie passed through, there was a sea of blood and mountains of corpses. Every time, only a part of the people were able to escape. Moreover, most of the people couldn't even escape from the zombie's clutches. As time passed, more and more people began to understand the horror of this zombie and began to slowly withdraw from the cave mansion. Yi Shiwen jumped out of a room. However, he didn't gain anything. Not every room had a huge amount of wealth. Yi Shiwen had discovered hundreds of small spirit crystal mineral veins in the beginning. However, there was only one room. Yi Shiwen hadn't heard of any other similar fortuitous encounters during this period of time. Suddenly, 3 streamers of light crazily flew over from afar. Yi Shiwen looked at them attentively and saw that the leader was none other than Feng Qi. Although Feng Qi was wearing a white robe and a mask, but Yi Shiwen still recognized him at a glance. After searching for so long, he finally found Feng Qi. But when he looked carefully, he saw that Feng Qi was in an extremely embarrassing situation. There was an extremely deep crack on his chest that stretched from his shoulder to his lower abdomen. Blood kept gushing out from the wound. If it was a little deeper, Yi Shiwen had no doubt that his whole body would have been split into 2 on the spot. His intestines and internal organs could be faintly seen. There were countless other big and small wounds on his body. But at this time, he didn't seem to have the intention to stop. He continued to run for his life in the air. And behind him, 2 figures were chasing him. They were firmly locked on to Feng Qi. It seemed as if they were determined to kill him. Just like Feng Qi, they had also disguised themselves. Both of them were wearing golden robes, which symbolized the golden color of the gods. Their masks had been specially processed. Unless they wanted to, no outsider would be able to see the expression on their faces. The function of the mask was basically the same as the one that was given to him by the Alliance of God. Yi Shiwen immediately judged that these two should be the Xiantian Alliance's divine envoys. Seeing Fang Qi being chased like this, Yi Shiwen's first reaction was that he had succeeded. If he had not succeeded, why would these two people from the Xiantian Alliance chase after Fang Qi? Damn human. Hand over the magic tool, and we will spare your life. Among the two Xiantian Alliance's divine envoys, the tall and skinny one said in a low, muffled voice. The other one, who had a medium build, did not say a word. He kept forming one talisman after another in the air and launched them at Fang Qi. Fang Qi evaded the attack of these seals and said with a sneer, "If you have the ability, then continue to chase me. It's useless. Your last struggle is useless. You've been hit by my saber, and my saber chi contains my god's divine skill. Without enough time, you won't be able to recover. In this short period of time, you'll be severely injured and defeated. As long as you hand over the artifact, not only can I spare your life, I can also recommend you to join our innate alliance. Isn't that better than being a human oracle alliance?" The tall and skinny god's messenger continued to tempt Yi Shiwen. "You guys have forgotten your roots. I am different from you. Even if I die, I will not let you have it. At worst, I will blow it up and no one will get it." "Huh?" Fang Qi laughed and said with a crazed look on his face. The tall and skinny divine envoy said coldly, "Since you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me." As he spoke, he also joined in the attack against Fang Qi. The reason why he didn't use his full strength before was because he was afraid that he would completely anger Fang Qi and cause the magic tool to explode. If that happened, no one would be able to obtain it, and this was not what he wanted. Now, he could see that Fang Qi would rather die than let them have the magic tool. So, there was nothing to worry about. Even if there was no other way, he would still kill this human divine envoys. Then, he would find a way to find out about the inheritance of the gods. Maybe he would be able to obtain great benefits. Just killing a human divine envoys and reporting it to the Xiantian Alliance would be a great contribution. A bronze long saber appeared in the hands of the tall and skinny divine envoys. The evil chi instantly swept out, and the saber instantly slashed out. It tore the sky apart and instantly hit Fang Qi's back. Fang Qi, who had just dodged the attack, was completely unprepared and was hit on the spot. Bang! Fang Qi was directly hit by the saber and hit the ground hard. He rolled a few times on the ground and grimaced in pain. He didn't know how many bones in his body were broken. On his back, a huge wound was torn open and blood was spurting out like a pillar. "Number 9, it's me. You lead them to the southeast, and I will deal with them." Just when Fang Qi thought that he was about to die and there was no hope, he suddenly received Yi Shiwen's voice transmission. Suddenly, his heart was filled with ecstasy, and a glimmer of hope spread in his heart. At this time, he had no time to observe Yi Shiwen's whereabouts. Time simply didn't allow him to do so. He suddenly stepped on the ground, and his figure suddenly moved horizontally and quickly swept towards the southeast direction. Boom! At the moment when he moved, there was suddenly a huge saber chi at the position where he was standing. It directly cut open a huge crack in the ground where he was standing. The two of them didn't notice anything strange and immediately rushed out to chase after him. Fang Qi flew all the way to the southeast at an extremely fast speed. He did not even hesitate to burn his Zhen Yuan in order to increase his speed. The two people behind him were in hot pursuit. In their opinion, Fang Qi would soon be unable to hold on. At this time, they must not let him go. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. In the void, endless Ling Qi suddenly gathered in one place. Then, the void suddenly split open and a huge crack suddenly appeared. There was a faint roar of a huge buzzing sound. The entire void was boiling. The sky and the earth cracked. The whole world was shattered on the spot. In this terrible storm, an amazing saber chi swept out in the void and instantly cut through the sky at an amazing speed towards the two people who were chasing Fang Qi. Oh no! The tall and thin divine emissary reacted immediately. The saber chi was too amazing. It almost slashed out with the power of the dimension. He was also a saber user, so he reacted almost immediately. Puff! The other divine emissary with a medium build did not have time to react. He was directly cut by the terrible saber chi on the spot. It was a terrible saber chi that could kill immortals and gods. Many of the celestial devices on his body instantly exploded in an attempt to protect him. But in the face of this saber chi, they were simply vulnerable. Even the celestial devices of the heaven grade were useless. Countless golden divine powers boiled up and tried to protect him. But it was useless. The divine powers blessed by the gods were almost cut in an instant, and the saber chi fell on his body. His body was cut into two on the spot and exploded in the void. The saber chi did not lose its momentum. It went straight towards the tall and thin divine emissary. The tall and thin divine emissary reacted at this critical moment. He suddenly turned his body, and his whole arm was cut off in an instant. It exploded in the air. Ah! The divine emissary let out a blood-curdling scream and tumbled to the side. He looked at the void in horror and disbelief. Just a moment ago, he was almost killed on the spot like the other divine emissary. He almost died on the spot. If the saber chi had not stopped for a moment when it killed the divine emissary, it would not have given him enough time to react. Perhaps he would have been killed on the spot as well. Chapter 1541. Huff, huff, huff. Only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard in the whole place. Fang Qi was seriously injured. At this time, he finally saw Yi Shiwen, so he reluctantly stopped and began to treat his injuries. His injuries could not be delayed any longer. Originally, according to the Tu Xian Tian Alliance's thoughts, if this continued, he would only end up dying on the spot. Death from serious injuries, there was no other ending. As for the skinny and tall oracle, his eyes were still filled with disbelief. He almost died together with Fang Qi. At this time, his eyes were filled with fear. Come out! Who is it? The tall and thin divine emissary shouted loudly. The terrible sound waves stirred the space like waves, undulating. In the void, a figure in a white robe walked out. He wore the same mask as Fang Qi and looked coldly at the tall and thin divine emissary. Damn, there was an ambush. I was too careless. The skinny and tall oracle gritted his teeth and said, because before, there was not the slightest sign that Fang Qi might have companions, so they slowly relaxed their vigilance. If he had companions, they should have already come out. In the process of the chase, Fang Qi could be said to have escaped several times by luck. If he had companions, he should have already come out to help. He did not expect that they would be waiting for him here. Once they attacked, they directly killed his companions, and even he was seriously injured. He suddenly realized that the new master in front of him was also panting heavily. He suddenly thought of a possibility, that is, this person has also exhausted his strength? Suddenly, the idea of leaving suddenly faded. That attack just now was too terrifying. Not to mention a surprise attack. Even if he took it head-on, he would only end up being killed on the spot. If he did not dodge quickly, perhaps his fate would not be any better than the others. Such an attack was not something that a sixth sky of celestial realm could release. Even if he sealed his cultivation, it was impossible. Then there was only one possibility. He must have used some kind of magic tool or some kind of secret technique. If he wanted to release such an attack, he must have paid a price. And this person in front of him was probably already a paper tiger. Otherwise, how could he not take advantage of the victory and kill him? Thinking of this, all the mysteries were suddenly solved. He originally wanted to escape, but at this time, he had already forgotten about it. Although he had lost an arm, he felt that he was much better off than the two of them, one injured and the other disabled. He looked coldly at Yi Shiwen, who had just come out, and said, "Who are you? Why have I never seen you before? Are you a new member?" There were very few divine envoys who knew each other's true faces, but this didn't prevent them from understanding each other, especially the martial arts they used. It was very easy to determine who they were. There were only 9 official members of the Oracle League. Apart from Fang Qi, he knew about the other 8. That couldn't be the case. There was something wrong with his aura, so there was only one possibility, and that was that this person was new. That was the only explanation. A faint excitement rose in his heart. Newcomers were relatively easy to deal with. It seemed that he was about to strike it rich this time. Killing these 2 was the minimum requirement. If he could capture one of them alive, then he would be able to find a lot of things by following the vines to the melon. Maybe he could completely destroy the Oracle Alliance in one fell swoop. If that was the case, he could save a lot of trouble and speed up the return of the gods. It should be known that god envoys were different from ordinary people. They were the most trusted believers of the gods, and their relationship was extremely close. Similarly, every god envoy wouldn't be an ordinary person. Hence, although there weren't many god envoys, they were definitely terrifying top-notch experts. This was also the reason why, despite their small number, they had always been the headaches of various major forces in the ancient Barrens continent. They didn't have many people, and they didn't have any major forces. Hence, it was very easy for them to break up. It was basically impossible for ordinary people to find them. Furthermore, they were basically standing at the peak of the ancient Barrens continent. Even if ordinary people were to find them, they wouldn't be their opponents. Those top-notch experts who could contend against god envoys were undoubtedly the top-notch experts of various major forces. They were the pillars of their existence. In the past, there had been situations where many forces encircled and annihilated the Oracle Alliance. In the end, the most active forces experts were all killed, and the force declined directly. Some were even exterminated by their enemies. Hence, very few people continued to harm themselves to benefit others. Hence, it slowly evolved into the Oracle Alliance. Only the Oracle Alliance could deal with the Oracle Alliance. Fortunately, there were many conflicts between the Oracle Alliance members, and they killed each other. Otherwise, the ancient Barrens continent wouldn't have ended up like this. The terror of the Oracle Alliance wasn't limited to ordinary people. It was the same for the Oracle Alliance members. It wasn't easy to kill an Oracle Alliance member. Many oracles had their own trump cards, and there was no way to kill them. Fang Qi was chased by 2 experts of the same level for such a long time and suffered such heavy injuries. Yet, he could still hold on until Yi Shiwen arrived. One could imagine how powerful the Oracle Alliance members were. Just now, Yi Shiwen only used a sneak attack to kill the 2 defenseless people. One was killed, and the other was heavily injured. Otherwise, who knew how the battle would turn out if they faced each other head-on? Because of this, even though the Oracle Alliance formed by human god messengers was the weakest among all the god messengers organizations, and even the strongest Xiantian alliance couldn't eliminate them after so many years. If he could follow this clue and find some clues and destroy the Oracle Alliance in one fell swoop, his contribution would be unparalleled. At that time, he would definitely be rewarded handsomely by the Xiantian alliance's higher-ups. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a little excited. Moreover, in his eyes, the 2 of them were already lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Yi Shiwen looked at him indifferently, and his breathing gradually calmed down. Just as he expected, Yi Shiwen had indeed exhausted all the qi in his body. If not, he wouldn't be forced out by this skinny Oracle Alliance member with such a simple method. That was because he really didn't have much qi left. He couldn't even hide in the void anymore. This was Yi Shiwen's second time fighting with the Oracle Alliance member, but the last time he watched Fang Qi fight with the 2C race experts, it was enough to see how terrifying the Oracle Alliance member was. It was far beyond the ordinary geniuses. This made him extremely afraid, and he had no choice but to kill the Oracle Alliance member. He took out the Emergent's immortal exterminating saber and attacked with all his strength, but unfortunately, it was all in vain. Only one of them was killed on the spot, and the remaining one only had his arm cut off. It was not even a serious injury. If it was in the outside world, Yi Shiwen's only choice was to run away when he encountered these 2 Oracle Alliance members. The current him was indeed not a match for these people, and he still needed time to grow. Behind him, Fang Qi was sitting in midair, and the light of the divine technique on his body illuminated most of the void. He was using the divine technique to heal himself. Although the effect was not as good as the Phoenix regeneration technique, it was after all a martial technique bestowed by the gods. Naturally, the healing effect was unquestionable. Ordinary wounds would have healed long ago, but because the wound this time was too severe, it was delayed until now. Newcomer, I advise you to surrender obediently. If you can reveal some information about your Oracle Alliance, maybe it will be useful, and you could be introduced to the First Heaven Alliance. An arm slowly grew out of the tall and skinny divine emissary. It wasn't a corporeal body, but an arm made of energy. Although it was just an arm made of energy, its might wasn't any weaker than a corporeal body. This was also an inherited cultivation technique passed down by his god. He continued to restore his arrogant expression and glanced at Yi Shiwen condescendingly, thinking that victory was in his hands. What's wrong with today? Why do all of you want me to surrender, and each of you is so confident that I will surrender? Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. His voice seemed muffled through the mask, and it was hard to tell whether it was a man or a woman. Do you want to resist stubbornly? I know you should have some secrets, but so what? You have no Jin Yuan now. The thin and tall Oracle Alliance member looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, Without Jin Yuan, you are just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Do you know what happened to the last person who tried to persuade me to surrender? Yi Shiwen looked at the thin and tall Oracle Alliance member and asked. Without waiting for the Oracle Alliance member to answer, Yi Shiwen said to himself, Now, I have already sent him to hell. Why? Do you want to go down and accompany him? Little by little, Yi Shiwen's Jin Yuan started to boil, and his imposing aura also started to rise little by little. Recovered a little? The thin and tall Oracle Alliance member glanced at Yi Shiwen and said calmly, Do you think I can't see through your thoughts? It's nothing more than trying to stall for time while talking, and then buying more time for yourself to recover Jin Yuan, that's all. What's the use of that time? In such a short time, even if I give you several times more time, it will still be useless. You are simply not my opponent. Today, the fate of the two of you has already been decided. I originally wanted to give you a chance, but I didn't expect that you two would be so stubborn. So don't blame me. You talk a bit too much nonsense. Do you really think that in such a short time, I won't be able to recover much? Yi Shiwen calmly looked at the thin and tall Oracle Alliance member and said in a cold voice, You are very smart, and you can also see my current state, but you have miscalculated one thing, and this one thing is enough to get you killed. After saying this, Yi Shiwen's aura crazily soared, and it didn't look like he was exhausted like before. Chapter 1542. This thin and tall oracle had calculated everything, including the current situation of Yi Shiwen and Feng Qi. However, he had missed one point, and that was Yi Shiwen's recovery speed. It was impossible for him to think that there was actually a martial art like Phoenix regeneration technique that could restore himself to the peak state in such a short period of time. Although this period of time was not enough for him to recover to the peak, but it was enough for him to recover a small part of his qi, enough for him to fight a battle. This little miscalculation might not be a big deal in normal times, but at this time, it could become the most fatal point. At this time, the eyes of that thin and tall oracle also flashed a bit of a horrified expression. The speed of Yi Shiwen's skincare was still far beyond his expectations, and then a bit of a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Yi Shiwen's recovery speed was very fast, but because of this, he could not let him continue to recover like this. Boom! This thin and tall oracle took a step forward, and a vigorous aura instantly overflowed. His body's qi and blood surged in an instant, and there was a kind of faint divine coercion that shrouded Yi Shiwen. The bronze long blade in his hand began to buzz, and there was a faint roar of a fierce beast boiling in it. And around his body, a terrible energy condensed, which made the whole world shatter on the spot. A vast aura swept out, sweeping out in all directions. It was unbelievable. This was like the power of a god. Shua! He suddenly took a step, and his body flashed with a burst of golden light. His body instantly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he had already appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. The long blade suddenly chopped down, bringing with it a boundless momentum, vast and indistinct, as if the world was splitting apart, and swept 300 miles. And at this time, Yi Shiwen directly pointed in the air, sky shaking form. The air trembled madly, as if it were a picture scroll. It twisted and then shattered, and a terrifying force of energy shot out, piercing through the vast expanse to meet the blade. Boom! The terrifying blade light and the finger energy collided in the air, shattering everything. The space was like the surface of water, fluctuating wildly. Then, unable to hold on, unable to contain such a huge amount of energy, it completely shattered. The battle between the two was like a celestial being. Originally, the sixth layer of the celestial realm could be said to be a very big threshold and also a peak state. In addition, both of them had the inheritance of the gods, so they were the top figures in this realm. Although Yi Shiwen had not yet stepped into the sixth layer of the celestial realm, but his fighting strength could already be regarded as the invincible king in this realm, second only to the giants of the seventh layer of the celestial realm. Thus, as soon as the two of them exchanged blows, the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. It was extraordinarily intense. In addition, the two of them did not hold back at all. In fact, they were aiming to kill each other. At this moment, the situation was even more tragic. This was a terrifying collision. Both sides were exchanging blows without any pause, especially that tall and thin divine envoy. He didn't dare to let Yi Shiwen continue to recover. Boom! It was another terrifying collision. That tall and thin divine envoy retreated again and again. His face was ashen. He actually couldn't take down Yi Shiwen. On the contrary, his arm was faintly collapsing. Although that arm of his was only condensed from energy, in terms of power, it was not inferior to the flesh, and even more tyrannical than the flesh. Unexpectedly, he was at a disadvantage in the collision, and faintly his entire arm was about to collapse. If it was the flesh, he might have broken bones by now, blood splashing out, and the flesh would be badly mutilated. There was fear in his eyes as he looked at Yi Shiwen. But more than that, there was killing intent. The more outstanding Yi Shiwen's performance was, the more he feared Yi Shiwen, so he had to deal with him quickly. The long blade in his hand buzzed, and the roar of a ferocious beast swept across. He took a step forward and launched another attack towards Yi Shiwen. All the blood in his body began to surge, and the golden divine power covered it. It was as if he was a god who had descended to the world. Today, I will make you die without a place to bury your body. He roared like a wounded beast, and the saber energy swept wildly, forming a sea of saber energy. The divine power in it boiled, and instantly shrouded Yi Shiwen. It was as if a real world of saber energy had been formed, and it was incomparably shocking. In an instant, the entire vast sky was cut into pieces. This large expanse of saber energy instantly condensed into a huge net, shrouding Yi Shiwen, sealing all his escape routes, not giving him the slightest chance to breathe. Humph! Yi Shiwen gave a loud shout, raised his hand, and pointed his finger. Endless Zhun Yuan splashed out from his fingertips, and a circle of terrifying energy spread out in all directions like the waves of the sea. The endless Bladiki hadn't even approached Yi Shiwen when it was directly smashed into pieces by this energy. Then, Yi Shiwen's finger pierced through the sky and went straight towards the tall and skinny divine envoy. To catch bandits, one must first capture the leader. Killing him would solve the current crisis. Rumble! A series of crazy explosions, and the sky full of saber energy directly shrouded Yi Shiwen, and shrouded him, like falling rain, swept down, and directly fell on Yi Shiwen's body. The sky collapsed, and endless smoke and dust raged, and the energy swept wildly. That tall and thin divine envoy looked into the void, and saw that in the endless energy storm, Yi Shiwen's body had formed an ancient cauldron, protecting him in it. The endless energy waves had no way to fall on his body, and on the contrary, all of them had been completely annihilated 3 feet away from his body. How is this possible? He was a little shocked and a little frightened. Yi Shiwen was in high spirits and did not have the slightest fatigue after the battle. On the contrary, He was getting more and more energetic. What did this mean? It meant that for Yi Shiwen, the collision just now was nothing at all. His recovery speed even exceeded the speed of consumption. He couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. This recovery speed is too fast. In this case, who was his opponent? Wouldn't he be tortured to death? He wanted to know more, but there was no way. He knew too little about Yi Shiwen, the new member of the Oracle Alliance, and he didn't even know what Yi Shiwen was good at. And this time, it should be said that it was also Yi Shiwen's first mission as a member of the Oracle Alliance, so other people didn't know Yi Shiwen's various information at all. However, Yi Shiwen didn't wait for him to think too much. Yi Shiwen's chi directly broke through the vast sky, just like a tide, sweeping over, bursting out a terrifying light in the sky, directly breaking through his Dao Qi. Yi Shiwen's Dao Qi covered the sky, but he only broke through the sky. The entire starry sky exploded in an instant, and the energy was like a hot knife through butter. A wall composed of divine power appeared in front of the tall and thin divine envoy, and instantly blocked in front of Yi Shiwen's finger. Boom! It was like a meteorite smashing into the magma, setting off boundless waves. In the end, Yi Shiwen's energy was still an arrow at the end of its flight, and it was not enough to penetrate this wall composed of divine power. That thin and tall oracle didn't even have time to catch his breath, but he didn't know when Yi Shiwen had already appeared in front of him. He only felt a blur in front of him, and Yi Shiwen had already appeared in front of him. So fast! He was secretly shocked in his heart, and he only had time to raise his hand to block, but he saw a sword light directly breaking through the vast sky and slash down on his arm. Boom! His arm was slashed and exploded on the spot. That energy arm finally couldn't support completely, and it was chopped off by Yi Shiwen's sword. However, this also bought him some time. His body directly moved back a distance of hundreds of feet, directly avoiding the range of Yi Shiwen's sword light. Right at this moment, when he was finally able to catch his breath with great difficulty, a spear suddenly tore through the sky and swept towards him. Pucci! Although the tall and thin divine envoy had tried his best to dodge, there was no way to avoid the spear at all. His other remaining arm was also pierced on the spot by this spear, and the terrifying penetrating power brought his whole body flying out, and he was severely nailed into the wall. Boom! His whole body smashed into the wall, and a human-shaped pit was formed. Don't cough, don't underestimate me. Fang Qi, who was recuperating on the side, suddenly said. The person who had just attacked was none other than Fang Qi. Although Fang Qi had been chased like a stray dog, but in essence, he was still a tyrannical divine envoy. It was only because he had faced two experts of the same level that he was in such a difficult situation. In a one-on-one fight, he had never been afraid of anyone. Even when he was recuperating, his vision was still accurate, and he instantly attacked, fast, accurate, and ruthless. Just when the tall and thin divine envoy had almost forgotten that he was a cripple, Fang Qi attacked and killed him in one blow. The tall and thin divine envoy struggled a bit, but it was useless. This bronze spear had supreme power, like a weapon used by the gods. Once he was nailed by it, he would not be able to escape in a short period of time. And at this time, Yi Shiwen had already rushed up to kill. Although he and Fang Qi didn't have a tacit understanding, but his speed was enough to make up for everything. The sword key dispersed in midair, forming a sword lotus, which fell on the spot and went straight towards the divine envoy. Ah! This god's envoy roared, and his figure suddenly leapt out, dodging Yi Shiwen's deadly sword lotus. Boom! Endless smoke and dust dispersed in all directions. Yi Shiwen looked through the smoke and saw that the divine envoy, who had been nailed to the wall, only had one arm. At the critical moment, he had sacrificed his own arm in exchange for an opportunity to escape. It could be said that he was ruthless and merciless. A truly ruthless person wasn't ruthless to others, but to himself. Chapter 1543. There was no doubt that this thin and tall oracle met such conditions. He was absolutely cruel and merciless. He did not show the slightest mercy to Fang Qi, and now he did not hesitate to be cruel and merciless to Yi Shiwen. To be able to make such a decision in that instant, he could definitely be called a ruthless person of his generation. Fang Qi saw that he was not able to kill him in one blow, and he was also somewhat in disbelief. Huff, huff. That thin and tall oracle was constantly panting in the air, and even the breath he exhaled contained the smell of blood. It could be seen to what extent his injuries were now. But he had no choice, and there was no way out. It was not easy to escape a fatal blow, and at this time, his heart was incomparably glad that he would have died in the hands of Yi Shiwen. He stopped the bleeding from the broken arm, and little by little, the energy arm grew back. This was good. Both of his arms had become energy arms. Even so, it was not something that the average person could accomplish. With the exception of some extreme martial arts, if a limb were to be severed, that limb could only be reattached within a short period of time. Otherwise, that limb would be the equivalent of a cripple. That was something that would not change even after stepping into the sky human stage. Even if it was the generation of energy arms, this was the ability of gods, and only divine techniques could do it, and mortals could not do it at all. It was rumored that there were countless Dharma forms of gods. Some had 3 heads and 6 arms, and some even had 1,000 arms and 100 eyes. Naturally, those were not naturally formed. They were all formed by energy. Even so, these energy limbs were not inferior to ordinary limbs. This was the power of gods. Cutting off an arm to survive. Is the god behind you a gecko? Otherwise, why would he teach you these things? Yi Shiwen said in a somewhat contemptuous tone, and did not care about letting him escape. Damn, you dare to blaspheme the gods. You are also a oracle, and yet you blaspheme the gods like this. Are you not afraid of divine punishment? This thin and tall oracle stared at Yi Shiwen hatefully, and Yi Shiwen actually blasphemed his most respected god. For him, this was simply unforgivable. Gods? If the gods are that kind of selfish people, then I don't want them. Moreover, I don't know where those people have gone to. If they have the ability, then let them crawl out of their graves. Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. You, that skinny and tall oracle, was suddenly at a loss for words. He didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would be so disrespectful towards the gods. Moreover, he didn't even have the slightest bit of awe towards the gods. This was simply unimaginable for an orthodox oracle like him. Every move of these oracles could be known by the god behind them. As long as the name of this god was mentioned, even if they were thousands of miles away, they could still be sensed. This was the power of the gods. Therefore, when they mentioned him, they only dared to say that it was him. They definitely did not dare to mention his name. Even he did not dare to mention the name of a human god carelessly. Just the name alone had made them so nervous. So, they couldn't imagine how Yi Shiwen had developed such a lawless character. He was so disrespectful to the gods. He was not an ordinary person. Ordinary people didn't know the existence of the gods, or were not sure of the existence of the gods. But he obviously knew the existence of the gods and still dared to be so disrespectful. You dare to blaspheme the gods. You will be punished by the gods. Even the gods behind you will never allow you to blaspheme the gods like this. This thin and tall oracle roared angrily, like a beast whose territory had been violated. Yi Shiwen scoffed at this. In a sense, the gods were like those ancient officials. They could fight to the death with each other, but they would never allow the commoners to violate them in the slightest. Even if the commoners complained to the officials, they would have to go through torture, such as rolling on a nail board. This was to maintain the dignity of the officials. The gods in this world were the same. In the mythological era, no one dared to disrespect the gods. No matter which clan the gods belonged to, they had to lower their heads in the face of such a great existence and prostrate in front of the gods. Blasphemy? Ridiculous. Yi Shiwen looked at this skinny and tall god's envoy, as if he was looking at a pitiful dog. Moreover, it was a brainwashed dog. Fang Qi and the others also understood that these gods' envoys of innate alliance were merely dogs reared by those innate gods to fight for the human race. Yi Shiwen finally made his move. He didn't have the patience to continue waiting like this. He took a step forward, and the imposing aura swept out of his body. After such a long time, His imposing aura had also climbed to the peak. The magic of the Phoenix regeneration technique had once again been verified. At the same time, the tall and skinny oracle suffered heavy injuries. Under such circumstances, the situation was fundamentally different from just now. Shua! Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and his figure instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the skinny and tall divine emissary. He suddenly thrust his sword, and countless sword Dao principles began to bloom around the sword light. It flew up and down, and its speed was extremely fast. The skinny and tall divine emissary only had time to see the sword light, and the long sword had instantly stabbed in front of him. In an instant, a wall of divine power was erected in front of him to protect him. The sword light suddenly pierced through the divine power wall. Crack! 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 The layer of divine power wall was shattered little by little. Unlike before, this time Yi Shiwen used his full strength. Then, an extremely terrifying sword chi instantly jumped out and traversed hundreds of feet. Boom! The sword light ruthlessly bombarded the body of the tall and thin divine emissary with the speed of a sudden clap of thunder. Rumble! A series of explosions sounded. Countless magic weapons on his body suddenly exploded. The sword light was directly cut by Yi Shiwen. However, the sword light's momentum did not decrease and directly slashed his body. Pucci! The sword light directly pierced into his body. In the end, he still could not compare with Yi Shiwen's physical body. One sword completely pierced through him. The long sword with unparalleled inertia directly nailed this thin and tall oracle into the wall. The sword light in Yi Shiwen's hand directly pierced a huge hole in his body. You! This thin and tall oracle stared at Yi Shiwen with his eyes wide open. He suddenly died with a grievance. He stared at Yi Shiwen in a daze and stopped breathing. He probably never dreamed that he would die in Yi Shiwen's hands like this. Yi Shiwen heaved a sigh of relief after killing this god's messenger. He was just about to search for the wealth of this god's messenger when suddenly a loud bang resounded, and this god's messenger directly exploded into a mass of blood mist. The terrifying shock wave directly blew Yi Shiwen hundreds of meters away. A bit of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He couldn't believe what was going on. Probably the self-protection program in his body has been activated. Some gods directly buried a wisp of their soul in their oracle's body to prevent their inheritance from being leaked to outsiders. As long as he stops breathing, it will directly explode. If someone is too close, they can easily be killed by him. At this time, Fang Qi's voice came over and said. Yi Shiwen was somewhat stunned. It was really vicious. If he had fought with this tall and thin god's envoy a moment ago, then it was very likely that he would have been killed on the spot by such an explosion. In fact, it was very likely that he would have been seriously injured. In that case, he would have gone for wool and come home shorn. However, his tyrant body was after all extraordinary. In just a moment, he had already suppressed the boiling blood and almost recovered. Are you okay? Yi Shiwen looked at Fang Qi and asked. Just now, his body could be said to be not in a good place. At this time, his body was still emitting colorful rays of light. He was constantly operating the divine technique to heal his injuries. However, compared to a moment ago, there was a significant improvement. Yes, I almost died, Fang Qi said. Yi Shiwen was a bit embarrassed. He came late and caused Fang Qi to be in such a state. Otherwise, he would not have been in such a state. Did you get the divine tool? Yi Shiwen asked. Of course, otherwise, they wouldn't be chasing me like mad dogs. Fang Qi said with a sneer. No matter what, this is not a good place to recuperate, Yi Shiwen said. Now there is a zombie in this cave mansion chasing people everywhere. If it was not to find you, I would have already left. Damn, why didn't you say so earlier? Hurry up and go, Fang Qi quickly said. He had personally witnessed Yi Shiwen's fighting prowess. He was afraid that it would be difficult for him to meet a worthy opponent in the sixth heavenly layer of celestial being realm. So, the strength of this zombie must be terrifyingly strong. although outsiders had to seal their strength to the sixth heavenly layer of celestial being realm to enter the Immortals' Cave, but the original creatures in the Immortals' Cave did not have this restriction, just like that powerful wind Shilin. For Yi Shiwen to be so afraid of it, it probably had the strength to tear apart a master of the sixth sky of celestial realm. He was very confident in this point. The two began to frantically escape outside. Sure enough, near the entrance of the cave, an incomparably huge zombie was wantonly killing, directly blocking the entrance of the cave, making it impossible for people to pass through. This zombie was constantly roaring, its roar shaking all directions. Even though the entrance to the cave was very big, and under normal circumstances, it would have been impossible to completely block it. However, this zombie had already enlarged itself and used the dermic world magic power. With such a huge body, it directly blocked up the entrance to the cave. Many people wanted to escape, but it was impossible. At this time, many masters in the cave couldn't help but feel a sense of fear when facing this fierce monster. Chapter 1544. Holy T. How did such a big beast come into being? Feng Qi looked at the huge monster in front of him and couldn't help but say. Yi Shiwen was somewhat embarrassed. It seemed that this zombie had mutated after he had entered the cave. However, he didn't hide it and directly told Feng Qi. So this is the owner of this cave mansion, 5 Elements Supreme. I didn't expect it to be him. Feng Qi narrowed his eyes and said, I understand. The reason why 5 Elements Supreme didn't turn into a zombie is probably because of the Wind Shilin. The Wind Shilin is the auspicious beast of the world and suppresses all evil spirits. Therefore, even though 5 Elements Supreme has been dead for countless years, he didn't turn into a zombie. However, the Wind Shilin had just left and 5 Elements Supreme had turned into a zombie. Feng Qi almost immediately guessed the reason. Hey, powerhouses of this level are the most troublesome. Although their bodies are protected by the world's laws, and they have reached the realm where their words are the law, they are a myth and a legend. Their life is a myth and a legend. The probability of them turning into a zombie is almost smaller than the probability of an ordinary person turning into a zombie after being exposed to the sun. However, you also know that powerhouses of this level are protected by the world's laws, and it is extremely difficult for their bodies to decay. Therefore, the final result is a long night and many dreams. No matter how impossible it is, as long as there is a small possibility, it may eventually lead to a terrible accident. Yi Shiwen nodded. This was indeed very troublesome. It was indeed very difficult for their corpses to turn into zombies. However, what about 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years? As long as the corpses were immortal, there was a possibility that they would turn into zombies. 100,000 years was too long. In such a long period of time, even a small probability would become a 100% occurrence. Therefore, the elders of the various forces would often order their corpses to be dismembered and used as materials for practicing divine tools. Otherwise, they would simply transform into Tao before their death and disappear into the world's law. Or, if it was too late, the disciples of the younger generation would also help them transform into Tao. In short, if the corpses were left behind, they might not turn into zombies in the end. However, once they turn into zombies, the zombies of this level would undoubtedly be extremely terrifying and could brew into a huge zombie kingdom. Roar! The roar of 5 Elements Supreme that had turned into a zombie shook the cave entrance crazily, making everyone shudder. This time, are we all going to die here? Are we all going to be annihilated? Someone said in fear. A zombie like this was a terrifying threat to any of them. Any one of them could cause them to be completely annihilated. Heavens, how was this zombie formed? It must at least have the power of the celestial being realm. Although we are also considered strong in the celestial being realm, there is still no room for comparison with this kind of monster that is at least in the celestial being realm. His strength is so terrifying, and his corpse didn't decompose and turn into a zombie. Could he be the owner of this cave? Someone made a bold guess. Needless to say, he really guessed it correctly. What do we do? How are we going to get out? Are we going to be trapped here forever? Someone said worriedly. At least some of them will be able to survive. Those supreme geniuses all have their own methods. They should be able to escape. At this time, some people looked at the leaders in the sky. The great demon clan's majesty had also escaped. Although he was in a bit of a mess, he had at least escaped from death. In addition to him, Yao Zhao was also standing in the void, looking at the zombie at the cave entrance with a dignified expression. In addition to them, the Sea Emperor of the Sea race had also arrived with his people. Yi Xuan originally thought that he would fight with Yi Qiong for the Wind Qilan's heart outside. He didn't expect that he would come in, and now he was also trapped here. In addition to these top experts of the young generation, there were also some old antiques who had sealed their own cultivation. Their auras were long, and their strength was even more tyrannical than the top experts of the young generation. As long as we rush out of the cave entrance, we will be fine. This zombie seems to be suppressed by some law. It can only move in the cave and can't go out. Some people noticed that the zombie's range of activity had always been near the entrance of the cave, but it had never rushed out. From this, they speculated that it might have been suppressed by some kind of law, so it couldn't move as it pleased. Let's rush out together. I don't believe that it can stop all of us. If we rush out one by one, it will be a dead end for us. At this time, uneasiness and restlessness began to spread among the crowd. Many people couldn't wait any longer. Instead of waiting like this, it was better to go all out. Many people believed that it couldn't kill all of them. In this way, they would have a hope of escaping. As the saying goes, it's better to let others die than to let others die. Kill. Let's go all out. I don't believe that it can stop all of us. A large group of people, densely packed together, rushed towards the cave entrance at this time, regardless of what race or status they had previously belonged to. They wanted to seize a way out from the zombie's hands. Yi Xuan sneered. He clearly saw that the people who had been inciting the crowd to escape were the subordinates of the Ocean Emperor, the great demon clan's highness, and the other top experts. It seemed that their purpose was very obvious. They wanted to send them to their deaths, and then see if they could fish in troubled waters and escape during the chaos. However, Yi Xuan didn't warn these people. After all, these people were just courting death. He was also waiting for an opportunity. Although he had a certain degree of confidence that he could escape by relying on the devil wings. But after all, it wasn't safe. So, it would naturally be best if he could safely escape. Roar! The zombie opened its bloody mouth and let out a frenzied roar. It bared its two huge fangs, and immediately, endless sound waves turned into sound blades that swept out in all directions. These warriors who rushed forward suddenly suffered heavy injuries. Their internal organs were shaken to the point of bleeding by the sound blades. They screamed and fell from the sky like dumplings, bleeding from all 7 orifices. The zombie roared, and a big hand grabbed out from the void on the spot. The people who fell were immediately caught on the spot, crushed into a cloud of blood mist, and were absorbed by the zombie. Only some of the more powerful people could barely resist the ear-piercing, demonic sound and barely avoided the big hand. At this time, their faces were pale, and they were almost scared to death when they saw this scene. This zombie's strength was too terrifying. Most importantly, it seemed to have just mutated into a zombie, so this zombie didn't seem to have fully developed spiritual wisdom and could only act based on instinct. Although its physical body was extremely strong, it didn't have any martial arts, let alone the martial arts of its previous life. Otherwise, with the two added together, this zombie would be really terrifying. It would be invincible, and even the family heads of the various powers wouldn't be a match for it. But even so, according to the judgment of some old antiques, with just its instincts alone, it would be able to kill ordinary celestial realm experts. It wouldn't be easy to escape from such a monster. Now's the time, run. At this time, the great fiendish demon clan's highness gave an order, and the few remaining demon experts around him jumped out one after another. Although the experts around him could be said to be dead or injured, those who could survive were all elites. They were either experts at the peak of the 6th heaven of celestial realm, or old antiques with their cultivation sealed. No matter which one it was, they were terrifying enough, and they had enough strength to escape from the zombie's mouth. At the same time, a large group of experts like the Ocean Emperor, Yao Zhao, and Yi Shiwen rushed out frantically. Yi Shiwen and Fang Qi were no exception, and they rushed out with the others on the spot. Only at this time, when the zombie crushed those people, would there be a small gap. Everyone was waiting for such a small gap. Although it was very cruel, this was the reality. These people didn't have enough strength, and they wanted to search for treasures, so they had to be prepared to become cannon fodder. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a good thing in the world. Roar! The zombie discovered that these people were actually trying to escape from under its nose, and immediately let out a loud roar. The sound waves swept out layer by layer, but compared to the previous group, the strength of this group was obviously much stronger. Even in the face of the demonic sound, they didn't completely collapse. Although they covered their ears in pain, it was useless. This kind of demonic sound blasted into their bodies in almost an instant, and their internal organs would be instantly shaken. Just covering their ears was useless. Everyone had no choice but to use their magic tools to resist this sound wave. At this time, the terrifying zombie moved again and directly grabbed down with a big hand. Several experts of the sea race, demon race, and human race who couldn't dodge in time were caught on the spot. With a loud bang, they fell and hit the ground hard, unable to move. All the bones in their bodies had been smashed, and some people even stopped breathing. Facing a Heaven Paragon-level monster, no one could count on luck. Even if it was a Heaven Paragon monster that hadn't awakened all of its martial arts, it was terrifying enough. And everyone took advantage of this time to rush out, especially the Ocean Emperor, the Royal Highness of the Great Demon Race, Yao Zhao, and the others. They directly rushed out in the blink of an eye and escaped from the predicament. However, the zombie once again grabbed the center of the group with one hand, and its target was none other than Yi Shiwen. It seemed to hate him very much and directly grabbed at Yi Shiwen without caring about the others. Chapter 1545. This zombie seemed to have remembered something. It still remembered that Yi Shiwen had taken away its hidden treasures. At this moment, it directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen and clawed at Yi Shiwen. It was fast and urgent. Almost in an instant, it penetrated the void and clawed at Yi Shiwen's back. Its physical body was tyrannical. It directly clawed through the void as if it had clawed into the water. After a wave of fluctuations, it smashed into Yi Shiwen's body. Even Yi Shiwen had no way of avoiding a terrifying zombie that had already gone berserk and had reached the heavenly laws realm. He was directly clawed on the spot. Bang! There was a sound of metal clashing. Then, Yi Shiwen was blasted away like a cannonball. Even the Ocean Emperor and the others took a second look at this scene. It was because of the sound of metal clashing. Those who had been clawed by this zombie before had all exploded on the spot without exception. Many people could not even withstand the demonic sound of its roar, let alone being clawed on the spot. If there was a ranking list that specifically searched for the races with tyrannical physical bodies in the world, then zombies would definitely be on it. Moreover, they would be one of the top races. Regardless of the race, if they turned into zombies after death, their physical bodies would definitely become even more tyrannical. Even a race that was extremely weak when it was alive would still be extremely violent after death. If it was a race that was naturally tyrannical like the dragons and titans, then they would eventually transform into an extremely terrifying zombie king with an invincible physical body. Although this zombie was a human when it was alive, its physical strength was already so tyrannical. Naturally, its physical body would not be much worse. Moreover, after becoming a zombie, it was strengthened, so its physical strength was already unimaginable. At this moment, such a sound could be heard from its claw. From this, it could be inferred that Yi Shiwen's physical body was also terrifyingly tyrannical. However, they only paid a little attention. After all, Yi Shiwen was still wearing the Oracle Alliance's robe and mask. They did not know Yi Shiwen's true identity, so they did not pay too much attention to him. There were too many powerful people in this world. If they had to pay special attention to all of them, then they would not need to do anything else. Not to mention what the others felt. Yi Shiwen alone felt a heavy blow on his back. A terrifying force raged in his body, and his entire body was blasted away on the spot. Suddenly, he felt a sweetness in his mouth. He could not control himself and directly spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were incomparably shocked. This zombie was much more terrifying than he had imagined. This terrifying force was also Yi Shiwen's. His entire body had strengthened his entire body to a whole new level. If it were an ordinary person, even if their body could withstand it, their internal organs would be turned into minced meat under the impact of this huge force. A series of roars came from behind him. This zombie was simply infuriated that it could not kill Yi Shiwen. It began to pour its anger on those who could not escape. Suddenly, there was another massacre of corpses and blood. Many people were slaughtered on the spot while screaming in pain. Even though the zombie had utilized the Dharma idol world, causing its body to grow in size, its speed was not slow at all. In fact, it was incomparably fast. With a swipe of its gigantic hand, there were very few who could escape from it. Not everyone had the speed of the Ocean Emperor and the others, who could stand out if there was a slight gap. Number 10. Are you all right? Feng Qi's worried voice sounded in his ear. He had seen Yi Shiwen being clawed at the back. It was absolutely shocking. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been clawed to death on the spot. Yi Shiwen said, "I'm fine. I won't die for a while. Go back first and bring the magic tool back. This is more important. I'll be fine after resting for a while. A long night may bring trouble." All right then. Feng Qi gritted his teeth and looked at Yi Shiwen. He also felt that Yi Shiwen's words made sense. Although the two masters sent by the Xiantian Alliance had died tragically in Yi Shiwen's hands, who knew if they had other backup plans? Perhaps they had already learned of the mission's failure through their deaths, and would send more masters to hunt them down. If the magic tool fell into the hands of the Xiantian Alliance, it would be really bad. Yi Shiwen was seriously injured, but he would not be in serious trouble for a while. He could only leave first. After watching Feng Qi leave, Yi Shiwen forcibly suppressed the surging qi and blood in his body. There was a huge, ghastly wound on his back. It was covered in green corpse poison, and the flesh around it was already rotten. This was the corpse poison secreted by a celestial realm zombie. Yi Shiwen did not dare to take it lightly. He hurriedly used the Phoenix regeneration technique to heal the wound on his body. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally had time to look at the situation outside the cave. He saw that the wind Qilin that was trapped in the formation was also covered in wounds. In the formation of the demon race, demonic thunder constantly bombarded the body of the wind Qilin. This wind Qilin could be said to be constantly roaring, but it could not do anything as it was bound by the formation. This wind Qilin was extremely angry. It constantly roared, and the surrounding sky and earth changed color. One after another, Yuan Qi bombs were spat out from its bloody mouth. Wherever they passed, the space would turn upside down, and they would land on the formation. Every time, the formation would shake slightly. At this time, the faces of the demons who set up the formation were also pale. Many of them had bloodstains on the corners of their mouths. In order to trap such a terrifying wind Qilin, even if they used the ingenuity of the formation, it was still too much for them. Originally, there should have been other experts to help, but because of Yi Shiwen's unexpected intrusion, it led to the great demon race's highness directly leading a large number of demon race elites to rush in. Only these few people were left, and it was very difficult for them to even hold on, let alone continue to complete the original goal of killing this wind Qilin. Every time this wind Qilin rushed in, the formation would shake once. Seeing that the frequency of the shaking was getting more and more frequent, these demons were about to be unable to hold on. Hold on as long as you hold on. This wind Qilin is dead. At this time, the great demon race's highness finally rushed over with the few remaining experts. Upon seeing this, he quickly shouted. At this time, these experts of the demon race saw this, and their confidence was greatly boosted, but it was useless. They were already forced into a desperate situation. When the voice of the great demon race's highness fell, the wind Qilin let out a crazy roar and spat out a mountain-sized Yuan Qi bomb, directly blasting a huge hole in the sky. let alone the formation that was trapping it. Boom! Amidst a series of explosions, the formation that had trapped the wind Qilin for a long time finally collapsed with a loud bang. Not good. Everyone's complexion changed drastically. For them, the wind Qilin's escape was not a good thing. The wind Qilin roared and immediately opened its bloody mouth, and an unparalleled suction swept out. Qilin drinking water. Suddenly, everyone around felt an unparalleled powerful suction pulling them towards the wind Qilin. The devils who had their formations broken spat out a mouthful of blood and instantly suffered heavy injuries. At this time, how could they resist this crazy suction force? They all screamed miserably as they were sucked in by this terrifying suction force. Then, they all fell into the big mouth of the wind Qilin. Crack! The wind Qilin's big mouth suddenly closed, and these demons screamed as they were bitten into pieces. Damn beast! The great demon race's highness flapped the wings behind him and roared with a hideous expression. He did not expect so many people to die in one go. Currently, the demon race's strength on the ancient Baron's continent could only be considered to be lingering on. If it weren't for the Abyss Devil Master's connection with the demon race, besieging the ancient Baron's imperial court with their strength would not only be courting death, but they would also be annihilated in minutes. This was also the fundamental reason why the human race, and even the various races of the ancient barons, could tolerate their existence for countless years. Compared to ordinary forces, they were much stronger. However, compared to the human race and other giant races, they were still vulnerable. Therefore, even if they besieged the imperial court, they could only let the demons in the demon world be responsible for holding back the royal nobles of the human race, so that they could not spare any effort to annihilate the human race. However, they had already exhausted all their strength to besiege the imperial court. If it weren't for the Abyss Devil Master, they would have been defeated long ago. Therefore, in reality, their military strength was not as abundant as many people thought. This time, they naturally had other motives for bringing such a large group of people here. Who knew that they would suffer such heavy losses? In the end, there were only a few people left. Some of them were annihilated by the zombie, while the rest died tragically in the hands of the wind Qilin. How could he not be enraged as he stared at the wind Qilin fiercely? Although these two were incomparably terrifying beasts, in his opinion, the wind Qilin was naturally easier to deal with. The wind Qilin swallowed dozens of demon race experts and instantly burped. Then, it looked at the other experts with a ferocious gaze. Its aura was incomparably terrifying. At this moment, Yi Qiong, who had been hiding at the side, finally made his move. Along with a shocking sword aura, it broke through the clouds, and a 1,000-meter-long sword radiance illuminated the sky. The huge sword pressure swept out in all directions, and everyone's expression changed drastically. This terrifying sword pressure, this is... Yi Shiwen also looked at Yi Qiong, who was in the middle of the battlefield, in disbelief. This sword pressure was actually emitted from his body. Chapter 1546. This terrifying sword pressure, this is... Yi Shiwen also looked at Yi Qiong. He couldn't believe that this sword pressure was coming from him. This sword pressure was far beyond the 6th level of the Sky Realm. It even surpassed the 7th level of the Sky Realm. Now, it was spreading out from Yi Qiong's body. With his body as the center, it swept out in all directions, forming a huge tornado. It looked exceptionally terrifying. This could it be the Yi clan's most precious treasure, the Permethos sword? Yao Zhao murmured in disbelief. I've traveled among humans for many years and have long heard of the reputation of the Permethos sword. However, I've never seen it in person. I didn't expect to see the Permethos sword here. The Permethos sword. It's the Permethos sword. At this time, many people reacted and recognized the origin of this terrifying sword pressure. Especially Yi Qiong, his eyes were shining brightly. It's the Permethos sword. The clan leader even passed the Permethos sword to Yi Qiong. How biased! Yi Qiong squinted his eyes, full of murderous intent. He said he would let us compete fairly, but he still chose Yi Qiong. As a member of the Yi clan, He knew far better than Yao Zhao, Ocean Emperor, and the others how powerful the Nirvana sword was. Even the demon-suppressing mirror that his master, Yi Zhun Mo, carried was not as powerful as the Nirvana sword. It was the true Yi clan's magical artifact, and its status was similar to the Sun King sword of the Sun Royal clan. It was almost the representative of the clan leader. Only the clan leader could have the Permethos sword. This in itself was a symbol. It was impossible for ordinary people to understand the position of the Nirvana sword in the hearts of the Yi clan. The Yi clan had faced several calamities, and they had all relied on the Nirvana sword to truly avert danger and kill the powerful enemies that had invaded. No, it's not the Permethos sword. It's just a sword intent. Yi Kuang quickly discerned this and let out a sigh of relief. Although the five of them were competing equally and he had the full support of Yi Zhun Mo, in the end, he couldn't be compared to the Patriarch. If the Patriarch gave up, then it would be very disadvantageous for him. If the head of the family gave the Permethos sword to Yi Qiong, then everything would be over. Of course, the head of the family would definitely be criticized by many elders of the Yi clan. However, it was just lending him a sword intent. What was wrong with that? It was not used to kill the disciples of the Yi clan. What was wrong with a teacher helping his disciple? No one could find fault with this in itself. Yi Shiwen also recognized this sword intention from afar. He had once felt it faintly on the body of the clan lord. As for the Yi family's ultimate treasure, the Permethos sword, he naturally wouldn't be so ignorant as to not know anything about it. It's the sword intention of the Permethos sword. No wonder he was so confident that he could kill this Wind Kirin. Even if this Wind Kirin was at the 9th level of the Celestial Realm and was an adult Wind Kirin, he still had such confidence. So, this is the source of his confidence. Yi Shiwen muttered to himself. He had seen it earlier than Yi Kuang and knew that it was merely of sword intention. It's merely of sword intention, but it has such power. The power of the Permethos sword is truly unimaginable. Even if it's not as good as the Sun King's sword, I'm afraid it's not that far off. Shwa! This astonishing sword light instantly shot out. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed color. Ghostly cries and howls resounded in the world. A terrifying power rippled in the world. Shwa! When that sword light appeared again, it had already appeared in the sky above the Wind Kirin. Boom! In the sky, that sword light fiercely chopped down and directly chopped the neck of the Wind Kirin. Poochie! With a loud sound, blood spurted out crazily. The head of the Wind Qilin rolled to the side. Its huge body, which was like a small mountain, suddenly collapsed and fell to the ground. Huff, huff, huff! Yi Qiong panted heavily. Although the sword was sealed in his body by the Patriarch, he had to activate it himself if he wanted to use it. For him, this sword will require him to put his heart and soul into it in order to activate it. If this attack failed, then he could only escape frantically. In the face of an adult Wind Kirin in the 9th sky of the Celestial Realm, wouldn't it be courting death if he stayed? Silence. A deathly silence. No one had thought that it would be so simple. That incomparably ferocious Wind Kirin was actually killed by Yi Qiong's sword. Although it had been severely injured by the Matrix, it was still an adult Wind Kirin in the 9th sky of the Celestial Realm. It was invincible in the same realm. Ordinary experts in the 9th sky of the Celestial Realm would not be its opponent. But now, it had died so easily under the sword intent of the Permethos sword. Even some of the rogue cultivators who entered paled at this moment. This was the foundation of a marquee clan. Just the tip of the iceberg was enough to make people so shocked. Moreover, the Yi clan was not the top marquee clan. There were even royal clans above them. These clans were all extremely tyrannical. The strength of their foundation was truly unimaginable. However, everyone's silence only lasted for a moment. Then, everyone moved and began to fly towards the Wind Kirin. The body of an adult Wind Kirin in the 9th sky of the Celestial Realm. One could imagine how precious it was. The one who moved the fastest was the Great Fiend clan's Royal Highness. At this time, he couldn't care less about the casualties of his subordinates. He directly rushed towards the corpse of the Wind Kirin. intending to take down the entire wind Kirin. Whoosh! A sword light pierced through the sky. Everywhere the sword light passed, the void was frozen into a world of ice and snow. The Great Fiend Clan's Royal Highness did not completely lose his mind. At the most crucial moment, he dodged the sword. The sword light directly shot through his treasured sword. The terrifying cold air directly froze his face. Oh! He was instantly enraged. There was actually someone who dared to stop him. This wind Qilin almost belonged to him. If he could obtain this wind Qilin, it would be better than nothing. After all, it would be much better than returning empty-handed after suffering a disastrous loss. At this time, a beautiful figure that was as cold as an iceberg blocked in front of him. It was none other than Yi Qianqian. At this time, she was holding the snow jade sword and looking at the Great Fiend Clan's Royal Highness coldly. It seemed like she wanted to kill him on the spot. Damn it, you actually dared to stop me. The Great Fiend Clan's Royal Highness was immediately enraged. This human woman who had just stepped into the sixth sky of the celestial realm actually dared to stop him. Wasn't she just seeking death? He was immediately enraged, but he did not directly make a move. The sword just now made him very afraid of Yi Qianqian. Perhaps Yi Qianqian had just stepped into the sixth sky of the celestial realm and was not too strong. However, with the snow jade sword in her hand, it was her greatest trump card. She had turned into a goddess of victory and was invincible. At this time, the others had also approached one after another. Apart from the Great Fiend Clan's Royal Highness, the closest one was the Ocean Emperor of the Sea Clan. A blue figure was extremely domineering, tearing through the void with a loud sound. He directly rushed up on the spot. Clang! With a loud sound, a huge sword fell from the sky and fiercely slammed into the field on the spot. The force of the terrifying sword light directly formed an air wall, blocking everyone outside. Then a figure slowly descended. It was Yi Shukong. As soon as Yi Qiong made his move, the two of them had already made their moves. The others did not know that Yi Qiong was going to make a move, but the two of them were here to cooperate with Yi Qiong, so they naturally knew. They directly blocked in front of everyone. Senior brother, we'll help you block here. Hurry up, Yi Shukong said with an abnormally serious expression. Although he considered himself the son of God, with unparalleled talent and cultivation, and had also made rapid progress during this period of time, even he did not have much confidence in facing so many top experts at this time. Therefore, he did not dare to say that he could block them. He could only block them for as long as he could. You, little brat, you haven't weaned yet, have you? That's right. Don't you see how many people we have? Who do you think you are? You're Yi Shukong, right? I know you're the famous son of God in the Yi clan, and your future is limitless. However, with your current strength, it's impossible for you to be my opponent. You'd better retreat, or don't blame us for being impolite. In the eyes of many people, Yi Shukong's actions were simply suicidal. Even if he could only block for a short while, it would be a joke to them. Among them, there were top young geniuses like the Ocean Emperor and the Great Devil Clan, as well as some old guys who had sealed their cultivation. None of them were ordinary people. To them, with so many people joining forces, even if they were blocked by Yi Shukong for a short while, it would be a kind of humiliation. Yi Qiong did not argue and immediately rushed out, sweeping in the direction of the Wind Kylin. At this time, a leisurely voice was heard. Yi Qiong, this Wind Kylin is an auspicious sign of heaven and earth. It should not belong to you in the first place. Moreover, you've killed a Wind Kylin, which is a grave sin. Give it up. A powerful figure appeared in the void, dignified and extraordinary. It was none other than Yi Qiong. It's you? Yi Qiong was a little surprised. He did not expect that the person who finally came out to stop him would be Yi Qiong. I've been wondering when you would make a move. I didn't expect you to be waiting here for me. He had long been prepared for Yi Qiong, but he did not expect Yi Qiong to finally make a move at this most critical moment. He made a move. Chapter 1547. What a good timing. Yi Qiong sneered as if he was facing a cold-blooded assassin. At the most critical moment, a one-hit kill. Today's Wind Kylin has nothing to do with you. Yi Kuang's expression did not change at all. It was as if he was talking about something very simple and insignificant. "You're really scheming to deal with me," Yi Qiong retorted without hesitation. "As long as you're not the one who gets it, anyone can do it," Yi Kuang said directly. "What a chilling friendship," Yi Qiong said with a grin. "There is only one head of the Great Yi clan. I am enough. I can lead the Great Yi clan back to its former glory. You will only be a stumbling block in my path. I don't need your existence," Yi Kuang said lightly, as if he was talking about something unimportant. Suddenly, just as everyone was going all out, a large hand directly pierced through the void and grabbed the Wind Kylan's corpse on the spot, grabbing it on the spot. "You're courting death, bastard! How dare you!" Suddenly, a burst of cursing could be heard. The moment the huge hand appeared, everyone realized that everyone present was a top expert. Just now, they were attracted by the Yi clan's people. Now, they reacted one after another and attacked the huge hand to kill it. However, the speed of this huge hand was extremely fast. They didn't even have time to react. By the time they attacked, the huge hand had already grabbed the hill-like body of the Wind Kylan and pulled it into the void on the spot. "Who? Come out! Come out!" Everyone suddenly went crazy. They had been confronting each other for a long time, but someone actually beat them to it. Everyone's divine sense swept out, and waves of terrible energy swept out. Amidst the waves of tsunami-like energy, a figure appeared. It was a young man in a green robe. "Yi Shiwen, it's you?" Suddenly, everyone recognized that this person turned out to be Yi Shiwen of the Yi family. At this critical moment, he had actually intercepted them. At this time, Yi Shiwen had also taken off the clothes of the Oracle Alliance. No one knew that Yi Shiwen was the person who almost died in the hands of the zombies. "Does your Yi clan plan to become enemies with all of us?" Someone roared. First, there was Yi Qiong, then Yi Qianqian, Yi Sukong, and then Yi Kuang and Yi Shiwen. The Yi family's members were all famous geniuses. So what? Do you know what first come, first serve means? If you want to be the Oriole, then you have to see if you have the strength to do so, Yi Shiwen said with a slight smile. "I think you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." At this time, the prince of the Great Devil clan instantly attacked. He abandoned Yi Shiwen in front of him and directly attacked Yi Shiwen. There was no point in confronting Yi Qianqian at this time. He must kill Yi Shiwen if he wanted to recapture the Wind Qilan's heart. Boom! The majesty of the Great Devil clan flapped the fleshy wings on his back and instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. The terrifying fist energy vibrated and fiercely bombarded Yi Shiwen's body. Clang! There was a loud sound of metal colliding. An ancient bronze cauldron appeared on Yi Shiwen's body and protected him inside. The attack of the Great Devil clan's highness couldn't hurt Yi Shiwen at all and was blocked by him. This devil can't do anything to Yi Shiwen. This Yi Shiwen really has some cultivation. Although this devil is arrogant, he is also a real expert. I am afraid that an ordinary expert at the peak of the 6th level of the Celestial Realm would not be a match for a few punches from him. Now that he has attacked with all his strength, he still can't do anything to Yi Shiwen. This Yi Shiwen is really amazing. This Yi Shiwen has been famous for a very short time, but the things he has done are getting bigger and bigger. No matter what, let's see how the two of them fight. It would be best if both of them are injured. Only then, we will have a chance to compete for the Wind Qilan. Don't worry, that devil is not so easy to deal with. These devils are all insidious and cunning. At this time, seeing the two of them fighting, the many experts who were originally ready to rush up also dispersed at this time. They didn't want to be cannon fodder. In any case, it was enough for the Great Fiend clan's highness to attack. There was no need for them to attack together. At this time, Yi Kuang also turned his head to look at Yi Shiwen. His eyes were shining. He clearly remembered that Jiagu Jingshua and Beishanju went to intercept Yi Shiwen. But now, Yi Shiwen appeared here, and the two of them were nowhere to be seen. Then, the result was already imaginable. Although he did not want to make such malicious guesses, after all, even he would have a headache if Beishanju and Jiagu Jingshua joined forces. But now, it had become like this. The result was already very obvious. But because of this, he also paid more attention to Yi Shiwen. Originally, he thought that Yi Shiwen could not pose any threat to him at all. The gap of hundreds of years was definitely like a natural moat, enough to separate the two of them into two different worlds. It was true that Yi Shiwen was progressing at a rapid pace, but how could he possibly stagnate? Therefore, the threat in his eyes was only Yi Qiong and other members of the five hegemons. Even Yi Shukong, who was known as the son of God and had the bloodline of God, and Yi Qianqian, who was rumored to be the reincarnation of a goddess, were only threats in the future. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen was insignificant. He would definitely take over the position of the clan master before he grew to a sufficient level of threat. It was not a big deal at all. Now it seemed that he had underestimated this junior, who only returned to the Yi clan more than 10 years ago. Ha ha, Yi Kuang, how is it? You miscalculated, Yi Qiong said while laughing. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. How about it? God disposes. I never believe in this. Yi Kuang looked at Yi Qiong and said, I am a person who is destined to succeed. You are not my opponent. Even if you join forces with Yi Qianqian, Yi Shukong, and Yi Shiwen, you cannot stop me from moving forward. I think you are a little too confident. Yi Qiong did not explain further because there was no need to. Yi Kuang was extremely arrogant, but he was also an absolutely confident person. Whether it is or not, you will know in the future. Yi Kuang narrowed his eyes and said, Whoosh! The next moment, the great Devil Clan's highness had already rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. The fleshy wings on his back flapped extremely fast. His speed was extremely fast. In an instant, his big hand suddenly fell towards Yi Shiwen like a pitch-black, evil prison mountain. His devil's claws were as sharp as a blade, and in an instant, they tore the sky into strips of cloth. It was incomparably terrifying. On the spot, he directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen's head. It was as if he could instantly crush Yi Shiwen's head like a watermelon. So fast. His agility. Everyone looked at the great demon clan's royal highness in surprise. This royal highness of the great demon clan seemed to be deliberately trying to intimidate the many powerhouses. He did not hold back at all. Brat, you have successfully angered me. I will chew your corpse to pieces and let everyone see the consequences of offending me. The roar of the great demon clan's royal highness reverberated in the entire void. Whoosh! However, Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster. In almost an instant, the huge devil's claw passed through Yi Shiwen's body, but it only caught Yi Shiwen's afterimage. If you want to use me to establish your prestige, then you are wrong, and very wrong. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen's voice appeared behind the great demon clan's royal highness. When? The great demon clan's royal highness suddenly reacted. He did not know when Yi Shiwen had appeared behind Yi Shiwen. He is so fast, everyone exclaimed in unison. If it was said that they were amazed by the speed of the great demon clan's royal highness just now, then they were amazed by Yi Shiwen's speed. Like a golden lightning, Yi Shiwen disappeared in the void in an instant and shuttled behind the great demon clan's royal highness. Damn, this is all you've got. Don't be arrogant. The great demon clan's royal highness suddenly felt that he was being despised. Almost in an instant, his waist and abdomen twisted 360 degrees, and his body directly turned horizontally. A monstrous devil's claw fell down and grabbed towards Yi Shiwen's direction. Let's see where you will go this time. The devil's energy surged out of his body, forming a monstrous devil wave. The devil's claw was like a mountain, but it was stopped when it was less than 3 inches away from Yi Shiwen's body. An ancient cauldron phantom instantly protected Yi Shiwen's figure. Boom! The devil's claw that was condensed from the devil's energy suddenly dispersed on the spot and turned into a strong force that swept across the sky. Thump, thump, thump. A huge force came back, and the great demon clan's royal highness was unable to stand in the sky. He retreated again and again, and his eyes were full of horror. He could not believe that it was actually like this. So, If you want to kill me, you have to break my defense first." Yi Shiwen's cold voice directly appeared in front of him. A big golden hand directly penetrated the void and grabbed the neck of the great demon clan's royal highness on the spot. "Do you really think that I tolerated you before because I was afraid of you? Pa!" The neck of the great demon clan's royal highness was directly grabbed by Yi Shiwen, as if he was grabbing a chick, without any pressure. Chapter 1548. One move, just one move. The great demon clan's royal highness, who was previously arrogant, was directly grabbed by the neck by Yi Shiwen on the spot, like an eagle catching a chick. Everyone was speechless and couldn't believe it. Everyone couldn't imagine that Yi Shiwen was actually strong to this extent. They all took a deep breath. At this time, they didn't know why, but they were a little glad that they didn't make the first move. Otherwise, they would be the ones who ended up like this. What? The great demon clan's royal highness was defeated. How could it be defeated? Just one move, and he was completely subdued by Yi Shiwen. Oh my God! At this time, everyone reacted one after another. They were shocked and shouted. Everyone couldn't believe it. This prince of the great devil clan naturally had his reasons for being so arrogant. His formidable strength was the source of his confidence. Only a few people present at the scene could be his opponent, but the result was that he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen so easily. Everyone suddenly had a feeling of being cheated. Was this Yi Shiwen too abnormal, or this royal highness of the great demon clan was just a paper tiger? But no matter what, everyone recognized the fact that Yi Shiwen wasn't someone to be trifled with in this world of the Immortal's Cave. This also made many people who originally wanted to come forward and fight for it to extinguish their thoughts. At the very least, it was impossible to do so within the abode. However, there were many old geezers that had sealed their cultivations that were unwilling to give up. The corpse of an auspicious Qilin beast was no different than a treasure trove to them, so they would rather shed all pretenses and fight for it. As for this Wen Qilin was actually killed by Yi Qiong, this matter had been magnificently ignored by them. In their opinion, it was theirs to be chosen by them. Even those who had the strength to defeat Yi Shiwen did not move. Yi Shiwen was so fierce. Even if they defeated Yi Shiwen, they were afraid that it would be a lose-lose situation. In the end, it would only benefit others. Roar! The royal highness of the great demon clan, who was grabbed by the neck by Yi Shiwen, was unwilling to give up. Endless demonic energy spread out from his body, crushing out layer by layer. He wanted to break free from Yi Shiwen's grasp. Yi Shiwen's body glowed with countless golden lights. Machi and golden divinities collided in the void and swept away everything. When the smoke and dust dispersed, the figure of the great devil clan's prince appeared again. He was crawling on the ground. His head was being stepped on by Yi Shiwen. He looked even more distressed than before. What? How could this be? My eyes must have gone haywire. How could this be? How could this be? How could this devil be so miserable? Everyone looked at the scene in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with shock. To the various races of the ancient barons, the demon race was the most terrifying race. They were everyone's enemy. However, this didn't stop them from being shocked. The great demon race's highness was definitely not weak. Yet he couldn't even withstand a single blow from Yi Shiwen. One could imagine how shocked everyone was. Everyone was silent for a long time before they burst into an uproar. Damn it, beast! The great devil clan's highness cursed. He stared at Yi Shiwen with hatred. His gaze contained the demon race's techniques. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand it. They might even die on the spot. However, to someone like Yi Shiwen who had a unique treasure, it was nothing. It was like a joke. Yi Shiwen exerted force on his feet, and a crack appeared on the great devil clan's head. Although his physical body was also very strong, there was still a huge gap between him and Yi Shiwen. No matter how he struggled or how many demonic techniques he used, it was useless. He wasn't Yi Shiwen's opponent. The power of the word seal was seeping into the great devil clan's highness body through his feet, rendering him immobile. He kept roaring, but he couldn't break free from Yi Shiwen's grasp at all. At this time, everyone couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts when they saw this scene. Yi Shiwen was using the great Devil Clan's highness as a target to warn everyone not to act rashly. His meaning was very clear. You're powerful, but are you powerful enough to do so? This one was still beaten up by me like a dead dog. What about you guys? Do you want to accompany him? This was a threat, a blatant threat. After thinking of this, many people's faces showed some anger. What did Yi Shiwen think of them as? Although he was furious, he had no other choice because Yi Shiwen was right. His threat had worked. These people were really afraid of Yi Shiwen in his current state. Many people were thinking about how to deal with Yi Shiwen after they got out of this place. However, now is definitely not the time to do so. Damn it, let go of our highness. At this time, seeing the great Devil Clan's highness being humiliated by Yi Shiwen, the remaining devil experts finally couldn't bear it anymore. A devil expert at the 7th level of Celestial Being Realm who had sealed his cultivation suddenly made a brazen move. In an instant, he rushed to Yi Shiwen's side, clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and punched down. Because it was a sudden attack, Yi Shiwen didn't notice his existence until later. Devil Ox's vigorous fist. He roared crazily. His fist energy turned into a huge devil ox in the void. Its 4 hooves were on fire, and it trampled on the horizon. Its whole body was pitch black. It was a very terrifying devil beast in the devil domain. This punch was a collection of pure and fierce power. This set of fist technique was developed by visualizing the movements of the devil ox in the devil domain. It was very terrifying. The power to uproot mountains and rivers, and the western chi was matchless. When the devil ox's 2 huge horns were about to ram into Yi Shiwen's body, Yi Shiwen finally moved. At the moment when it was about to touch Yi Shiwen's body, 8 treasures heaven and earth cauldron automatically emerged in Yi Shiwen's body to protect him. Endless divine light splashed out in an instant. The fist energy of the devil ox's vigorous fist fiercely bombarded 8 treasures heaven and earth cauldron. However, it couldn't bombard into 8 treasures heaven and earth cauldron. It completely disintegrated and then spread in all directions. Moo! This transformed devil ox also seemed to have gone crazy. It roared loudly, and its whole body was burning with flames. Waves of devil flame were monstrous, and it was mixed with endless devil energy. It was determined to smash 8 treasures heaven and earth cauldron. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally moved. He turned around and blasted out a punch. It was even more terrifying than the devil ox's vigorous fist. It was more unyielding and purer than the devil ox's vigorous fist. A fist energy swept out. It was not mixed with any magical power or martial arts, only pure power. Rumble! The 2 fist energies collided in the void with a loud bang. That devil ox almost only lasted for a moment before it was broken by Yi Shiwen in an instant. Its huge body directly turned into devil energy that filled the sky and disappeared between heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's fist energy did not lose its momentum. It directly blasted into the devil ox's body. Bang! The devil race expert let out a blood-curdling screech as his body was blasted away like a cannonball, crashing into the group of remaining devils. Those devils simply liked to dodge. They didn't have such a tyrannical cultivation base of the 7th heavens of Celestial Being Realm. They were also knocked out one after another and directly suffered serious injuries on the spot. A mouthful of blood spurted out and then fiercely hit the ground. How is this possible? The devil expert who had just attacked looked at Yi Shiwen in disbelief. How can he be so powerful? He is just a mere 7th heavens of Celestial Being Realm. How can he be so powerful? In the beginning, he only thought that Yi Shiwen had suddenly attacked and caught the great fiend Devil Clan's highness unprepared. Now that he thought about it, he was too naive. Even if he didn't suddenly attack, he still had the strength to easily kill the great fiend Devil Clan's highness. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "You want to save people on your own? You are too naive." At this time, the onlookers came back to their senses. They had indeed seen an earth-shattering battle just now. However, this battle was too short. It ended with Yi Shiwen's victory so easily. Many people secretly felt that it was a pity. They originally thought that this expert could cause some trouble for Yi Shiwen. Maybe he could even force Yi Shiwen to hand over the Wind Qilin's corpse. Who knew that it would end up like this? Yi Shiwen looked at them coldly, and then secretly transmitted his voice to Yi Qianqian, Yi Qiong, and Yi Shukong, saying, "You go first, then I will leave." "No. In this case, won't you fall into their encirclement?" Yi Qiong objected. At this time, he had almost recovered. This time was enough for him to recover. After all, he wasn't seriously injured. It was just that his Zhen Yuan had been depleted. You leaving now is the best result. Don't look at this place. They can't do anything to me. But once we leave this cave space, we may face their revenge. I don't have the confidence to withstand the revenge of those celestial realm powerhouses. Not to mention, there is also Yi Kuang among them. No matter what, we have no chance of winning against Yi Kuang. So now only you can leave first, and then I will leave alone. You can rest assured, with my agility, it is impossible for them to catch up with me. Yi Shiwen analyzed and said. The three of them thought that Yi Shiwen's words were indeed reasonable. They had seen Yi Shiwen's agility, and it was much better than their agility. Yi Shiwen's words also made sense. If there was a bloody battle, then they would naturally be able to help Yi Shiwen. On the contrary, if Yi Shiwen only wanted to break out of the encirclement, then it would be easier for Yi Shiwen to break out of the encirclement alone. They could easily become Yi Shiwen's burden. Chapter 1549. Although they did not want to say it, but they also realized that if they continued to stay, then it was almost inevitable that they would become Yi Shiwen's burden. Although their strength was not bad, and their agility was naturally not bad, but if they were in here, they still had the confidence to fight against these people. But once they went out, these people would restore the strength of Celestial Realm's 7th level. Then for them, it was tantamount to a disaster. Therefore, the best way was as Yi Shiwen had said. They had to leave first. Only in this way could Yi Shiwen leave calmly. Thinking of this, the three of them immediately disappeared into the void. At this time, no one noticed, or even if they noticed, they wouldn't care. After all, the corpse of the Wind Qilin was in Yi Shiwen's hands, and not in the hands of these three. Therefore, they didn't care where these people went. Moreover, many people were secretly surprised. Without these people's hindrance, it would be much easier for them to seize the Wind Qilin. They didn't need to rely on these people's actions anymore. At this time, only Yi Kuang noticed the departure of these people. A wisp of light flashed in his eyes, and he seemed to have understood a little. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen in a daze. They could only look at him and the royal highness of the great devil clan who was being stepped on by Yi Shiwen. The great devil clan's royal highness was originally a heaven's pride in the outside world, but in here, they were just like garbage. They were being stepped on by Yi Shiwen's foot, and they couldn't move at all. The great devil clan's royal highness was unwilling, and he constantly blasted out devil energy, wanting to shake Yi Shiwen away. However, Yi Shiwen was as steady as Mount Tai at this time, and he didn't have any intention of shaking. You demons want to be arrogant in the ancient Baron's continent? I think you're wrong, said Yi Shiwen coldly. This time, I want to tell you that this is not a place where you can be presumptuous and behave atrociously. Although Yi Shiwen was referring to the royal highness of the great demon clan, everyone knew that Yi Shiwen was also hinting at them, warning them not to act rashly. This wasn't the outside world. If they really fought, it would be hard to say if they died in the end. After all, in this realm, Yi Shiwen's combat strength had already reached a terrifying realm. The others couldn't be his opponent at all. However, it wasn't necessarily the case after going out. Many people were really scared by Yi Shiwen. However, there were a few who were unwilling to give up and decided to join forces, especially Yao Zhao, Ocean Emperor, Yi Kuang, and the others. At this time, they were naturally unwilling to let Yi Shiwen continue to be arrogant. Yi Shiwen's combat strength had frightened them, but it was also because of this that they wanted to kill Yi Shiwen in the cradle. No matter what, they wanted to kill Yi Shiwen first. Yi Shiwen, you'd better hand over the Wind Qilin's corpse. Then, I'll let you go for the sake of the Yi clan. Otherwise, you'll really die. Yi Kuang was the first to speak. His voice was cold and emotionless. Did he really care about gods, demons, and people of the Yi clan? In fact, he couldn't wait to strangle Yi Shiwen here. That's right, you'd better hand over the wind, Shilin. Don't think that you can do whatever you want with this special environment here. Don't you want to go out? Once you go out, what awaits you will be a thunderous strike. When that time comes, you won't be able to escape death no matter what. You'd better hand over the wind, Shilin. Yao Zhao looked at Yi Shiwen with an unfriendly gaze. Moreover, even among us, you're not the strongest. Do you think we're trash? Ocean Emperor didn't even look at the royal highness of the great demon clan, as if he was a dead dog. To them, this demon was indeed not a threat at all. Damn it, damn Sea Clan. Who are you calling trash? Although Yi Shiwen had stepped on his face, it didn't mean that the royal highness of the great demon clan didn't know what was going on. He was such a proud person, yet he was being treated like trash by Yi Kuang, Ocean Emperor, Yao Zhao, and the others. How could he accept this? His eyes were filled with extreme hatred, even more so than his hatred for Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had defeated him, so he had nothing to say. The demon clan worshipped the strong, but who did these people think they were? How did they look down on him like this? He was extremely angry. Ocean Emperor only glanced at the royal highness of the great demon clan coldly and didn't care about it at all. In his eyes, the royal highness of the great demon clan was completely powerless in front of Yi Shiwen. He was like a dog barking from afar, and there was no need to care about it. At this moment, endless divine light suddenly flashed under Yi Shiwen's feet, and with a bang, the royal highness of the great demon clan's head was crushed by Yi Shiwen on the spot. The great devil clan's highness didn't even have time to react, and was directly trampled to death by Yi Shiwen on the spot. Even his soul was crushed by Yi Shiwen, and his corpse was directly absorbed by Yi Shiwen into the Tianyuan mirror. Then, it turned into a blood mist that filled the sky, and was absorbed by the Tianyuan mirror. Rumble! The entire Tianyuan mirror began to rumble. The flesh and blood of the oracle that Yi Shiwen had killed before, as well as the corpses of Jiagu Zhishu, Beishan and some old antiques who had sealed their cultivation were also digested at the same time. These people had already stepped into the 7th heavenly layer of the heaven realm. Although they had sealed their cultivation in here, their essence was still the 7th heavenly layer of the heaven realm. The energy in their bodies was enormous. With a loud bang, all of it was transformed into an energy cup and absorbed by the Tianyuan mirror. Yi Shiwen, where did you kill so many powerhouses of the 7th celestial realm? Have you already entered the level of Tycoon now? More or less, in this case, I can recover quickly. Suddenly, Yi Mo's excited voice sounded in Yi Shiwen's mind. He had just woken up from a deep sleep, and he felt such a huge power, which made him excited in an instant. He didn't know what level Yi Shiwen had reached now. He could only judge from the energy of these flesh and blood. In his opinion, these were all experts of the 7th heaven of heaven realm. To be able to kill so many of them, it meant that Yi Shiwen should have also stepped into this level. However, his voice was only a flash in the pan. Even the energy of the 7th celestial realm, a Tycoon level, could only slightly wake him up from his deep sleep. It couldn't completely replenish his vitality that had been damaged because he had deceived the gods. In order to help Yi Shiwen, it could be said that his vitality had been damaged. It could even be said that he had hurt his foundation. He needed to recuperate for a long time. Without Yi Shiwen's help and continuous replenishment of his vitality, he might have to sleep for tens of thousands of years. This was the price of deceiving the gods, even if it was a god of unknown origin. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't in the mood to talk to Yi Mo at this time. He stomped on the ground, turned into a streamer of light, and disappeared into the horizon almost at the same time as he stomped on the great Devil Clan's prince. Not good. He wants to escape. At this time, Yi Kuang was the first to react. Combined with the scene he had seen before, how could he still not understand that they had probably left first, and after they left, Yi Shiwen should leave? However, his reminder was still a step too late. Yi Shiwen still rushed out first. Want to leave? Where do you think you're going? Behind him, Demon Zhao instantly reacted, and he almost instinctively chased after Yi Shiwen. Don't go. Leave the corpse of Wen Qilin. Give me your life. Suddenly, everyone reacted. Yi Shiwen actually wanted to escape, and they roared and rushed forward. The space was like the surface of a lake, completely penetrated by everyone. The celestial realm experts directly tore the void and chased after Yi Shiwen. Their bodies constantly flickered in the void, and in an instant, they had already caught up. At this time, Yi Shiwen, who had decided to escape, had no other scruples. The golden demon wings instantly spread out, and in an instant, he had already flown hundreds of miles away, leaving everyone behind him. However, he knew that this was not enough, far from enough. In this special space, he could still lead the others with Yao Yao. However, once they left this special space, when they recovered their 7th level of celestial realm and above, the difference in speed between them would be quickly evened out. The 7th level of celestial realm didn't just mean a slight change in cultivation. At the same time, it also represented a completely different realm. For many people, the 6th level of celestial realm was already considered a big shot, but only the 7th level of celestial realm and above would be called a big shot. The real top figures controlled the life and death of the ancient Baron's continent. Their strength was not just a little bit stronger than him. With his current cultivation, he could only escape unscathed from the 7th level of celestial realm experts. However, there was only one condition. With so many people, including a terrifying existence like Yi Kuang, Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest confidence. The wings of demon on his back were instantly upgraded to the wings of tempest. A gust of tempest wrapped around his body. His body, which was already extremely fast, instantly rose to another level. In the blink of an eye, he had already traversed thousands of miles. Soon, Yi Shiwen had already rushed to the entrance of the expert's cave residence. Behind him, the roars of those top experts could be heard continuously. They weren't far away either. Both sides had almost set off one after another, so naturally, they weren't far apart. Especially Yi Kuang, who was the leader. Yi Shiwen could almost see his figure. Chapter 1550. These experts were in hot pursuit. In the blink of an eye, both parties flew out of this chaotic space and entered the ancient Baron's continent. In the surroundings of this cave abode, the space was completely chaotic. Yi Shiwen, you're dead. How dare you trick us? Bastard Yi Shiwen, die. Die! At this time, many loud roars came from behind him. Then, Yi Shiwen could clearly feel that a tyrannical aura began to erupt. Those powerful giants who could only choose to seal their cultivation in the cave mansion had restored their cultivation. More than a dozen figures chased after Yi Shiwen. The strongest among them was undoubtedly Yi Kuang. Yi Shiwen recalled the rumor that Yi Kuang was breaking through to the 7th level of the Heaven Realm in seclusion. Now that he thought about it, it was a joke. At this time, Yi Kuang should be thinking of ways to break through to the 8th level of the Heaven Realm. In the Heaven Realm, every step was like ascending to the heavens. A realm was a world. Unless it was a monster like Yi Shiwen, ordinary people could not fight beyond their realms. However, even Yi Shiwen had no way to deal with these experts who were chasing after him. He could only flap the pair of tempest wings behind him crazily and flee in the direction of the Yi clan. At this time, the Yi clan was the safest. In the blink of an eye, time passed like sand. A day and a night passed in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen had been fleeing for a day and a night. The top experts at the 7th level of the Heaven Realm behind him were depressed. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. It was so fast that even with their strength that far surpassed Yi Shiwen's, they could not catch up in a short period of time. The Tempest Wings were unparalleled in explosive power. The Wind Wings were also unparalleled in long-term flight. However, the Wind Wings and Lightning Wings had been trained to the extreme by Yi Shiwen. Hence, no matter how they accelerated, they would realize that Yi Shiwen was still in the same place. There was no way to close the distance. As for those martial artists below the 7th heavens of the celestial realm, they simply couldn't hold on any longer. They had already given up on continuing to chase after Yi Shiwen. Only these top experts of the 7th heavens of the celestial realm could possibly continue the chase. Even among the experts of the seventh heavenly layer of celestial realm, there were also different echelons. Many people were already very far behind, and Yi Shiwen was slowly catching up to them. The reason why he was still constantly chasing now was also because he was unwilling to give up. In addition, he also wanted to see if there was any turning point, a typical case of not giving up until he reached the Yellow River. They did not know that all the aura on Yi Shiwen's body was undergoing subtle changes. In his Tianyuan mirror, a terrible power was rippling in it. A small spirit crystal mineral vein was madly burning. After burning, it disintegrated and turned into Lingqi. It was like a vast ocean, instilling into Yi Shiwen's body. For an ordinary person, it was impossible to practice during such an intense escape. However, for Yi Shiwen, who possessed the enlightening mind ancient tree, it was not a problem at all. He could maintain the state of clear mind ancient tree at any time. His mind wouldn't fluctuate in the slightest. Therefore, he could even make a breakthrough in the middle of a battle. This was a very dangerous thing for others. It was already very difficult to succeed even once. However, for Yi Shiwen, it was just like having a meal. It was as normal as eating and drinking water. It wasn't too dangerous for him. Not to mention, he was in such a crazy escape situation. His current cultivation had entered the peak of the third level of the heaven realm. He only needed time to slowly break through to the fourth level of the heaven realm little by little. The only thing he lacked was time. What Yi Shiwen lacked the most now was time. He did not have so much time to waste. Therefore, he could only choose the most extreme method, which was to use countless Lingqi to forcibly break through. What he lacked now was accumulation. Others used countless years to lay the foundation. If he wanted to make a breakthrough in a short period of time, he would have to consume more than others. He always knew this truth, but he always lacked enough Lingqi. He wanted to go back and apply for a batch of Lingqi from the law enforcement hall. But now, there was no need. Hundreds of Lingqi mineral veins, no less than 1 trillion Lingqi, made him rich overnight. Therefore, he was burning a small spirit crystal mineral vein. A small spirit crystal mineral vein was burning like this. Tens of billions of spirit crystals were being burned, and all of them were instilled into Yi Shiwen's body. One could well imagine what kind of effect such a huge amount of power could produce. Now, the realm barrier in Yi Shiwen's body was like a dam that was crazily attacked by a flood that only happened once in 10,000 years. His whole body was constantly sweating, and his whole body seemed to be fished out of the water. Countless powerful forces were rampaging in his body. If not for the enlightening mind ancient tree stabilizing his mind, he was afraid that he would have already died from the pain. Not to mention maintaining a calm state and directing this force to continuously break through to the fourth level of the heaven realm. He knew that only by stepping into the fourth level of the heaven realm could he hope to fight with those people behind him. At least, he would have the strength to sit on equal footing with them. He was forced to flee in such a sorry state by them, like a stray dog. He was also suppressing his anger in his heart. Perhaps they knew that it would be difficult to continue to catch up with Yi Shiwen, so these people also gradually gave up. Slowly, Yi Shiwen also could not feel the figures chasing behind him. Only then did he slowly let out a sigh of relief. And at this time, all the power in Yi Shiwen's body began to surge. Yi Shiwen knew that he was not far from breaking through, so he immediately flew forward. Soon, Yi Shiwen, who had gotten rid of these people, also received a reply from Yi Qiong and the others. They did not rush back to the Yi family immediately, but instead, they were not far away from Yi Shiwen and the others. They wanted to see when Yi Shiwen needed help, then they would be able to help. Yi Shiwen rushed to meet up with them in a valley. "Are you okay?" Yi Qianqian stepped forward and asked with concern. Her pair of beautiful eyes had never left Yi Shiwen's body. "I'm fine," Yi Shiwen said with a smile, but it was really thrilling. "They almost caught up with me. If they had caught up with me, then it would have been really troublesome. It's good that you're okay. It's good that you're okay," Yi Qiong also said with relief. These were all the pillars of the Yi family. Losing any one of them would be a huge loss. At this time, Yi Shiwen took out the corpse of the wind Kirin and found the Kirin's heart. He handed it to Yi Qiong and said, "Brother, this is the Kirin's heart that you needed. You should keep this. If it weren't for you, this wind Kirin would have most likely fallen into the hands of others. Moreover, it would have put you all in danger. I really don't have the face to take it anymore," Yi Qiong said with a serious look on his face. He was very clear about Yi Kuang's character. He was a man who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. If he said that he wouldn't let Yi Qiong obtain the Qilin's heart, then he wouldn't let Yi Qiong obtain it. According to the situation at that time, Yi Kuang was dragging Yi Qiong along with him. It was impossible for him to obtain the Qilin's heart. Therefore, it could be said that Yi Shiwen had obtained the Qilin's corpse by himself. "Brother, you don't need to be so polite with us. Speaking of which, didn't we also need your help in the past?" Yi Shiwen said, "Wind Kirin may also be a good thing for us, but it will be of greater help to senior brother. Wait until you step into the seventh sky of celestial realm. Then you will be able to contend against Yi Kuang. At that time, it will be an additional layer of protection for us." After going through this incident, Yi Shiwen clearly understood that it was useless to rely on one's own strength to provide protection. It was more effective and more secure to rely on one's own strength. "Yes, that's right." Yi Qianqian also nodded and said coldly, "Yes, compared to us, brother, you need the Kirin's heart more," Yi Shukong said. "Not to mention, we still have the corpse of the Wind Kirin. Although it is not as good as the Kirin's heart, it is still a supreme, precious medicine for us. It will definitely be of great benefit to us," Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He took out the corpse of the Wind Kirin from the Tianyuan mirror and piled it up on one side. "Well, I will not be unreasonable. In the future, if there is anything I need, I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." Yi Qiong did not continue to insist because he knew that he really needed the Kirin's heart. "But you're also about to break through. After eating this Kirin meat, I am afraid that you will be able to break through." Yi Qiong glanced at Yi Shiwen again and said meaningfully. With his cultivation, it was easy for him to see that Yi Shiwen was on the verge of a breakthrough. Not only him, but Yi Qianqian and Yi Shukong could also see that Yi Shiwen's body was constantly leaking energy, and some laws that could only be touched by the fourth level of the celestial realm were constantly manifesting. It was obvious that he was on the verge of a breakthrough. Yi Shiwen was only at the third sky of the celestial realm, but he had already beaten a group of masters at the sixth sky of the celestial realm half to death. Once he broke through to the fourth sky of the celestial realm, how fierce would he be? It seemed that it would be very interesting. Yi Shukong also looked at Yi Shiwen with a somewhat complicated expression. He felt that he was a step slower than Yi Shiwen. Although he still had a great advantage over Yi Shiwen in terms of realm, he was very clear that in terms of combat effectiveness, he was afraid that he had been left far behind by Yi Shiwen. He was somewhat unwilling in his heart, and his fighting spirit was burning. Chapter 1551. Among these people, perhaps only Yi Qianqian didn't care about it. She was so cold, as if nothing in this world could really attract her attention. Just like the ninth heaven fairy, only Yi Shiwen could make her look sideways. She only cared about Yi Shiwen, that's all. "Ha! Senior brother has good eyesight." Yi Shiwen's face showed a bit of joy. He was about to break through, and his heart was also very happy. Once he stepped into the fourth heaven of celestial realm, his combat power would probably be comparable to the masters of the seventh heaven of celestial realm. Whether it was the fourth heaven of celestial realm or the seventh heaven of celestial realm, it was a watershed, especially the seventh heaven of celestial realm, which was a watershed among watersheds. Once he showed such combat power, among the Yi clan's higher-ups, those who were not friendly to him would have to think twice. Even if they wanted to deal with Yi Shiwen, not everyone could do it. "Junior brother, you have good luck. In my opinion, although your talent is not too amazing, although it is far beyond ordinary people, Junior brother's luck is really like that of a celestial being. I have looked through the ancient books, but all of these people, without exception, are people who will achieve great things in the future." Yi Qiong saw through Yi Shiwen's situation at a glance. Yi Qiong saw through Yi Shiwen's situation at a glance. Over the years, Yi Shiwen's innate talent had slowly improved along with his cultivation. Compared to the beginning, Yi Qiong didn't know how much stronger he was. However, those who were able to enter the natural scripture were peerless geniuses. Among these people, Yi Shiwen seemed ordinary. Therefore, in his opinion, there was no other explanation for Yi Shiwen's rapid progress other than a series of fortuitous encounters. This kind of people were commonly known as people with great luck. Naturally, their luck was not bad, but compared to Yi Shiwen, there was still a gap. At this time, Yi Shiwen could only smile at this time. He could not explain much because the mysterious space inside his body was a shocking secret that could not be revealed to anyone. One day, he would take it with him into his coffin. Well, then I won't say much. This Qilin meat is also a great tonic. If it is combined with a lot of medicinal herbs to make a medicinal diet, the effect will be even better. If you eat it, it will be greatly beneficial for you. Previously, for this wind Qilin, I want to look up some ancient books and found an ancient recipe. It is an ancient recipe left behind by ancient humans who stewed Qilin meat. This recipe can maximize the benefits of Qilin meat. Yi Qiong grabbed an ancient recipe from the void and handed it over to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen could not help but be secretly speechless. This ancient person was really not ordinary fierce. He actually dared to eat Qilin as food. In the end, what kind of fierce person could be so fierce? One must know that in ancient times, Qilin was far from being as rare as it was now. In fact, it was almost a phenomenon. However, a pure-blooded Qilin would have the strength of the 9th layer of celestial being realm when it reached adulthood. Among them, the strong ones could easily break through to the celestial being realm. In the face of such a terrifying existence, someone actually dared to eat Qilin as food. Moreover, the most important thing was that this person had actually researched the recipe. The person who left this ancient recipe was definitely a strong person of his generation. No, it should be said that he was also a peerless, fierce person of his generation. He was too fierce. Yi Shiwen could only say that he was too fierce. Yi Shiwen glanced at the records of the ancient recipe. In addition to the Qilin meat, the other medicinal materials were also rare and precious medicinal materials. However, Yi Shiwen's Tianyuan mirror also had a lot of medicinal materials. Although he could not find many of them, he could still use other materials to replace them. He didn't hesitate at all. He had already burned the spirit crystals of 2 small spirit crystal mines. In other words, he had consumed 20 billion spirit crystals in such a short period of time. Although he felt that he wasn't far from breaking through, he was still one step away from it. He could feel that the opportunity lay in this pot of Qilin meat. Yi Qiong took the Qilin's heart to the side of the mountain wall. He dug a cave and entered into a state of closed-door training. Yi Shiwen and Yi Shukong also began to peel and clean this huge mountain of Qilin. Such a huge, fierce beast could not even find a pot. Yi Shiwen simply used the 8 Treasures Universe Cauldron. Although there were a few cracks on the 8 Treasures Universe Cauldron, Yi Shiwen did not have time to repair them. However, it was more than enough to cook this Qilin. The wind Qilin was finally cooked thoroughly after half a day's effort. Countless wind attribute principles began to manifest in the surroundings and unceasingly entwined in the valley. An extremely mellow, meaty smell mixed with the medicinal fragrance floated in the entire valley. Yi Shiwen had set up a magic array in the surroundings. So, he didn't let even a little bit of the medicinal fragrance and the meaty smell escape. One must know that this was mixed with the whole body essence of this Qilin. If it was an ordinary person, even a sniff of it could easily break through the heaven and earth bridge and enter the Xiantian state from the Hodian state. This showed how effective the medicinal effect was. Yi Shiwen sniffed the medicinal fragrance in the air and suddenly only felt that all the pores on his body were about to open up. The real yuan in his body also began to move. Almost under the influence of the medicinal and meat fragrance, it automatically broke through to the 4th sky of the celestial realm. I'm dying of cravings. I didn't expect to think like this. This is an authentic, auspicious beast, much stronger than any flood dragon I've eaten before. Yi Shiwen squinted and said, in the past, Yi Shiwen had eaten some mixed blood flood dragons and thought that it was already the best in the world. However, compared to the authentic Qilin, it was still a far cry. Although he was not a glutton, he still could not help but salivate. On the side, Yi Shukong also could not care less about the arrogance of the son of Divine Prince. He could not help but stare at the Qilin meat. This was a Qilin, a real Qilin that could only be seen in the ancient books. It was not a Qilin beast. An adult Qilin was a terrifying powerhouse of the ninth sky of the celestial realm. If one wanted to kill them, one would have to pay with their life. Moreover, even if one wanted to kill them, one would have to find the current Qilin. Hurry up and eat. I can't wait anymore. Yi Shiwen immediately grabbed the 8-treasure heaven and earth cauldron that had turned into a large pot and tore out a large piece of meat. He took a bite and immediately felt that it was incomparably delicious. His whole body was glowing. He only felt that the qi in his body was rising bit by bit. Ever since he started cultivating, his need for food was limited to the desire for good food. Under normal circumstances, he would not touch those kinds of food. It was also difficult to arouse his interest in ordinary food. However, today's Qilin was different. It was an authentic, ancient, auspicious beast, and eating it could also increase one's cultivation. Sure enough, I still have to be like a human, Yi Shiwen said with emotion. If it were not for Yi Qiong, he would probably directly crush the body of the Qilin beast on the spot and directly absorb all the blood essence. Although this method was more direct, how could it compare to cooking like this? Moreover, that was a bit too much of an animal. The two next to him, Yi Shukong and Yi Qianqian, were also eating until their mouths were dripping with oil. The aura on their bodies seemed to be uncontrollable, sweeping out in circles. Yi Shiwen had already entered the peak of the 3rd level of Celestial Realm. It could be said that he was already at the peak, so his cultivation was very limited no matter how much growth it had. However, these two were different. They had just entered the 6th level of Celestial Realm, and there was still a lot of room for improvement. Originally, they did not know how many spirit crystals and how much time it would take. Now, under the medicinal effect of the Qilin meat, their cultivation had skyrocketed. It could be said that a lot of time was saved. The two kept eating until they felt that their bodies could not eat anymore. They were completely full, so they gave up and quickly sat down cross-legged. Then, they began to refine this huge power. This was not an ordinary Qilin. This was a powerful existence of the 9th level of Celestial Realm. Under normal circumstances, the 4 of them together would not be a match for this Qilin. Moreover, it had lived for God knows how many years, and its power was so profound that it was terrifying. After Yi Shiwen's cooking, all the power was dispersed into the meat. If it was an ordinary person, they would not be able to withstand it at all. It was also because of their own tyrannical strength that they could refine it. But even so, they had only swallowed less than a quarter of the Qilin's meat. They really couldn't eat anymore. The skyrocketing spiritual qi was constantly gushing out from their pores. They couldn't control it even if they wanted to. Now it felt like they were swallowing clouds and spitting out smoke. When this power was completely refined, they would probably be able to enter the peak of the 6th level of Celestial Realm. There was even hope for them to rush to the 7th level of Celestial Realm in one go. On the other side, Yi Shiwen had devoured the other quarter of the Qilin's body. He had devoured both Yi Shukong's and Yi Qianqian's portions. One could imagine what kind of state he was in right now. He felt as if his body was bursting with power, tearing apart every cell in his body. It was as if his whole body was about to explode and then escape. Even his entire body was constantly bleeding. His blood vessels were squeezed and burst, and the blood was also full of medicinal fragrance. He sat cross-legged and closed his eyes to cultivate. He had already entered the peak of the 3rd level of Celestial Realm. He had also swallowed 2 small spirit crystal veins and 20 billion spirit crystals. It could be said that his accumulation was incomparably deep. He was just one step away, and this Qilin's medicinal cuisine was such an opportunity. Boom! 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 Yi Shiwen's whole body was also constantly exploding with a loud bang. Every time a loud bang exploded, it seemed as if a crack had appeared on the barrier of the realm. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Shiwen finally stopped exuding a terrifying aura. It was not because he stopped, but because he had broken through the fourth level of Celestial Realm. He had finally entered the fourth level of Celestial Realm. So you were hiding here. It took me a long time to find you. Chapter 1552. Yi Shiwen had just made a breakthrough. He didn't even have the time to be pleasantly surprised. Suddenly, an ice-cold voice came from the void. It was as cold as the winter. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen woke up with a start. So you were hiding here. It took me a long time to find you. Yi Kwang. Yi Shiwen felt goosebumps all over his body. He didn't expect that Yi Kwang would actually appear here. Suddenly, not only Yi Shiwen, but even Yi Shukong, Yi Qianqian, and Yi Qiong were also instantly alarmed. However, they were all in closed-door training to refine the Qilin meat or the Qilin heart. If they forced themselves to come out at this time, it would be tantamount to wasting all their previous efforts. Just like Yi Shiwen before, the consequence of forcibly coming out of closed-door training was that originally he was only a little bit away from breaking through, but in the end, it was tantamount to wasting all their previous efforts. If you don't take what the heavens give you, you will suffer. Don't move first. Let me go out and meet him, Yi Shiwen said immediately. As he moved, suddenly there was a burst of crackling sounds, as if his whole body had suddenly undergone a rebirth. From head to toe, his whole body was emitting the fragrance of treasured medicine, mixed with the smell of Qilin meat. Yi Shiwen immediately grabbed the remaining half-pod of medicinal cuisine and directly grabbed it in a Tianyuan mirror. Then, he slowly opened the array formation and flew out of the valley. In the void, he saw a figure standing in the void like a pillar supporting the sky. His eyes were as cold as snow, overlooking the valley where Yi Shiwen and the others were in. Seeing Yi Shiwen coming out, a somewhat surprised look appeared on his face. It seemed that he could also feel the huge changes in Yi Shiwen. In fact, even a blind person could see the huge changes in Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who had just broken through, did not have time to consolidate his realm. From head to toe, his whole body was emitting the unstable aura of having just broken through, mixed with the fragrance of Qilin meat and treasured medicine. For a moment, it was like an auspicious omen, with mist flying together. His whole person actually looked like a person in the realm of immortals. Have you already eaten that Qilin? Yi Kwang's complexion suddenly changed as he said. Thinking of this result, a sharp light flashed in his eyes and shot towards Yi Shiwen. For him, the Wind Qilin was almost in the bag. Although he had already thought of this result on the way, when he really saw it, he still could not help but be furious. Recklessly wasting natural resources, Qilin meat could be said to be the most expensive and the most rare ingredient in the world. As the saying goes, the heaven has dragon meat and the earth has donkey meat. Although Qilin was not a dragon, it was not much different. To it. Thinking of this, an inexplicable fire emerged in his heart. Thinking of this, an inexplicable fire in his heart. There should still be some leftovers left, right? At least there are some leftovers for you. Yi Shiwen sneered while looking at Yi Kwang and said. At the same time, he was constantly refining the remaining medicinal efficacies in order to stabilize his cultivation level and try to stall for some time. Yi and Yi Zaido, to consolidate, Yi, to the Kwang, to the Win, T, and to was to. Yi and Yi Shiwen, who had just entered the fourth sky of the celestial realm, didn't have the time to stabilize his cultivation. Even if he had just entered the fourth sky of the celestial realm, he still did not have the confidence to fight Yi Kwang. Yes, even if he had already entered the fourth sky of the celestial realm, his battle strength was not inferior to the seventh sky of the celestial realm. But even so, when facing Yi Kwang, who had already entered the peak of the seventh sky of the celestial realm, he still did not have much confidence. But the difference was that before, Yi Shiwen did not have much confidence in protecting himself. But now, it was more than enough to protect himself. This was also the fundamental basis of his confidence when facing Yi Kwang. I think you are courting death. Yi Kwang's expression was ugly, as if he had been angered by Yi Shiwen. Do you really think that I won't kill you? Don't be fooled by the fact that many people in your family are protecting you and watching over you. In my eyes, you are nothing at all. People like you are like weeds. If you cut off a batch, another batch will grow. You are nothing at all. We are weeds? Aren't you the same? Yi Shiwen sneered. Geniuses are meaningless. In this world, countless geniuses are born every moment. We're just a part of them that have grown up. When you ridicule us as weeds, have you ever thought that you are no better than yourself? Yi Shiwen sneered coldly. You are a genius. Me? How can you compare with me? I am the son of luck, and sooner or later, I will rule the Yi family. Only under my leadership, Yi family can walk on the path of glory and prosperity, and not like now, where even the Wang family dares to bully us. Yi Kuang said indifferently. His tone was incomparably confident. That kind of confidence made him look at Yi Shiwen and the others as if he was looking at ants. And the reason why Yi family has become like this is because there are too many people like you. Yi family only needs one voice, and this voice will be me in the future. Only under my leadership, Yi family can rise again. Not only can you not help Yi family, but you are also the stepping stones. Not only can you not help Yi family, but you also want to divide Yi family's remaining luck. This is absolutely a crime worthy of death. A crime worthy of death. Yi Shiwen laughed, but he was not angry at all. In his opinion, Yi Kuang was simply crazy. Yi Kuang regarded everyone as an obstacle, and even wanted to turn Yi family into a one-man army. This idea in itself was very dangerous. Although a wise leader could bring an organization to its peak, it could also completely destroy an organization. It was very dangerous to want to have a single word in the Yi family. Even God couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't make a mistake. This was an impossible thing in itself. The Yi clan's current system ensured the balance of power. Although it wasn't the best system, it wasn't the worst either. In this environment where there was competition and cooperation, the Yi clan's competitiveness could be guaranteed. This was the best system that had evolved after countless years of struggle. Yi Kuang actually wanted to overthrow this system. Unless his strength reached a frightening level, otherwise it would be impossible. Just thinking about it was already very dangerous. Yi Kuang was indeed worthy of his name. I don't want to talk nonsense with you anymore. Yi Qiong is down there, right? Yi Kuang looked at Yi Shiwen and said calmly. It was as if the person who had said those arrogant words just a moment ago was not him. I know that you wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to consolidate your realm. Speaking of which, I underestimated you. I didn't expect you to make such progress in such a short period of time. But it's useless. In front of me, you are no match for me. Even if you consolidate your realm, you are still no match for me. Your biggest problem is your age. If I give you a few more years, you may become a strong opponent, but you won't have this opportunity. I gave you a chance before. If you obediently hand over the Qilin's heart and let me cut off Yi Qiong's luck, then I would have let you live. But who would have thought that you would be so ungrateful? Don't blame me for what happens next. Yi Kuang narrowed his eyes and said, So, we have to thank you? Yi Shiwen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of logic was this? He wanted to rob them of the Qilin's heart, but now he wanted them to thank him? Only an arrogant person would be able to think of such logical thinking. Stop talking nonsense. If you want the Qilin's heart, then let's see if you can get past me first. Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. His aura had gradually stabilized. He had taken advantage of the time when he was talking to Yi Kuang. He had already consolidated his realm by 70 to 80%. Yi Kuang watched helplessly as Yi Shiwen consolidated his cultivation level bit by bit. Inevitably, a horrified look flashed in his eyes, but it was only a little bit of surprise and nothing more. He still didn't put Yi Shiwen in his eyes, but with his pride, he wouldn't do something that he didn't think was necessary. Yi Qiong hasn't appeared yet. It seems that he hasn't refined the Qilin's heart yet. If that's the case, then I still have a chance. If you step aside now, you still have a chance to live, Yi Kuang said. Otherwise, this day next year will be the day of your death. Yi Kuang's words rang in Yi Shiwen's ears. He didn't know when he had appeared next to Yi Shiwen. His speed was so fast that it seemed as if he had pierced through the void. However, he didn't make the slightest movement. His whole body was like a ghost, and he instantly appeared next to Yi Shiwen. A long sword was already in his hand, and it was unknowingly placed on Yi Shiwen's neck. Yi Shiwen's pupils suddenly contracted. So fast, cold sweat suddenly dripped down. It wasn't that Yi Kuang's agility was faster than his devil wings, but don't forget that he was only at the peak of the 4th level of the Celestial Realm, and Yi Kuang was already at the peak of the 7th level of the Celestial Realm. There was a gap of 3 levels between the two, and he didn't expect Yi Kuang's speed to be so fast. I know that your speed is very fast, but my speed is even faster. My agility was created by the ancestors of the demon-suppressing city based on a kind of demon butterfly in the demon world. It is called demon butterfly transformation, and I have already practiced it to the 8th transformation. It is impossible for your speed to catch up with mine, Yi Kuang said, but the movement of his hand was not slow at all. His long sword suddenly burst out with a powerful Jin Yuan and slashed towards Yi Shiwen's neck. Chapter 1553. Shua. Yi Shiwen's figure disappeared from Yi Kuang's hand. When he reappeared, he was already behind Yi Kuang. That was close. If it was before, I would not have been able to dodge your demon butterfly transformation. But now, don't look down on me. With this shout, Yi Kuang suddenly felt a terrifying power entangling and boiling behind him. Compared to before he had a breakthrough, Yi Shiwen had undergone an earth-shattering change. The vast energy crashed down, creating a huge crack in the ground. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. It did not succeed. Yi Shiwen didn't have any hesitation when his attack failed to succeed. He immediately jumped away, but the place where he had been standing a moment ago had already been penetrated by a big hand and instantly collapsed. In the void, both of them slowly revealed their figures. Both of them had a dignified look on their faces. Through the brief exchange just now, both of them realized that the other's speed was not ordinary. It would not be easy to win by relying on speed alone. For both of them, this was a difficult choice. If they were fighting in an ordinary place, then Yi Shiwen could easily leave, even if Yi Kuang's strength was stronger than him. But for Yi Shiwen, who had entered the 4th sky of Celestial Realm, the threat of Yi Kuang had been reduced to the minimum. But because Yi Qiong, Yi Qianqian, and Yi Shukong were behind him, he could only choose to face it head-on. For Yi Kuang, what he needed to do was to stop Yi Qiong from refining the Qilin's heart. Unlike Yi Shiwen, Yi Qiong had been competing with him for hundreds of years. They knew each other very well. Yi Qiong's foundation was very deep. Once he had the opportunity to enter the 7th sky of Celestial Realm, he would soon catch up with Yi Kuang's cultivation. Don't look down on the difference of 1 level. In fact, for the two of them, it was only a half-step difference. This was why he wanted to cut off Yi Qiong's luck and stop him from refining the Qilin's heart. Perhaps Yi Qiong would have a way to enter the 7th sky of Celestial Realm in the future, but the cut-off luck would form a gap and eventually collapse. If you don't take what the heavens have given you, you'll end up suffering from chaos. Once you miss some opportunities, you won't get them again. Therefore, he absolutely couldn't allow Yi Qiong to refine the Qilin's heart. This time, he knew Yi Qiong's plan in advance, so he could set up a targeted trap. However, Yi Shiwen had ruined his plan in the end. Next time, Yi Qiong would certainly be more careful and wouldn't easily let him know of his plan. At that time, it would be even more difficult to ruin his luck. Just like him, if Yi Shiwen hadn't accidentally discovered that he had obtained the God Sin, he might have already stepped into the 8th level of the Celestial Realm by now. At that time, he would truly be invincible. Facing Yi Kuang, who had already stepped into the 8th level of the Celestial Realm, Yi Shiwen had no chance at all. He would collapse on the spot, and he, Yi Qiong, and the others might all die. This was the relationship of cause and effect. Any small change could cause a huge difference. And this time, Yi Shiwen was the stumbling block on his path forward. Yi Kuang had a faint smile on his face. He really didn't expect that a small character that he didn't care about in the past would become the biggest stumbling block in his plan to eradicate Yi Qiong. Both sides had their reasons for fighting, and neither could retreat. Therefore, in just a moment, both sides had already decided that this battle was inevitable. Thinking of this, Yi Kuang's eyes once again became cold and ruthless. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen had now become a target that must be eradicated. Since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame me. I know that you have some fortuitous encounters, but now, all of them belong to me. Yi Kuang's eyes were cold, as if he could see through Yi Shiwen. If you want my fortuitous encounters, then come and try it yourself. Yi Shiwen sneered. No matter how much you say, you can't shake my will. This battle, I will not lose. The golden divinities on Yi Shiwen's body began to surge, and the golden luster illuminated half of the sky. From afar, he looked like a golden god, brave and invincible. In the face of such a strong enemy, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to hold back. The wind and thunder wings behind him spread out, and the surroundings quickly turned into a kingdom of wind and thunder. Countless wind and thunder forces swept across the sky. The power of wind and lightning seemed to have transformed into gods of wind and lightning. It was like a conquering army. All right, then let me kill you. Yi Kuang took a step forward, and a long sword appeared in his hand. He chopped out with his sword, and the space shattered with a loud bang, turning into powder and annihilated. Countless great waves were born and extinguished, manifesting in the midst of it. Everything in the world seemed to be contained within it, possessing endless changes. From this, it could be seen how unfathomable Yi Shiwen's realm was. Ordinary experts of the seventh heavenly layer of celestial being realm were simply not his match. Yi Kuang didn't use any moves, just a simple sword slash, but it had an unparalleled, terrifying power. It was as if the heavens had slashed down, and it was incomparably terrifying. Yi Shiwen's hands instantly spread out like a dragon's claw, and in the void, endless divine light splashed out. The torn golden light fiercely collided with the sword. Dang! An explosive sound of gold and iron colliding resounded. The golden rays of light and the sword chi fiercely collided with each other and vibrated again and again. The space fluctuated violently as if it was in a deep sleep. Then, it suddenly burst open with a loud bang, as if it was completely unable to accommodate this terrible force. Ripped! In an instant, the golden light that Yi Shiwen had torn out was cut open on the spot, and Yi Kuang's sword light did not lose its momentum, and once again, it slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen once again blasted out a punch, and the surging fist energy once again collided with the sword light. Boom! In front of Yi Shiwen's fist energy, the sword chi completely collapsed and directly turned into a divine light that filled the sky and disappeared in a puff of smoke. In the end, this sword chi did not fall on Yi Shiwen's body. However, Yi Shiwen's complexion became more and more dignified. Just now, both sides had collided head-on, and the result was that Yi Shiwen had fallen into a disadvantageous position. Although in the end, the sword chi did not rush in front of him, but the power of Yi Kuang's sword attack had required Yi Shiwen to use 2 moves to resist it. Right now, Yi Shiwen had only just consolidated his cultivation, and in front of Yi Qiong, who had climbed to the peak of the 7th sky of celestial realm, he still appeared to be very naive. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, and just as Yi Shiwen had destroyed the sword chi, Yi Kuang's next wave of attack violently blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not know what kind of swordsmanship it was, but the sword chi instantly swept down and formed a kingdom of swordsmanship, covering the sky, and sword light everywhere, forming a sword net that instantly enveloped Yi Shiwen. Facing Yi Shiwen, Yi Kuang did not plan to use any techniques, and only relied on his tyrannical strength to suppress Yi Shiwen. His ambition was not small. Facing this sky full of sword light, Yi Shiwen's eyes were like torches, and his big hand directly spread out and instantly grabbed towards the void of the sword light. Dang! A loud roar resounded. Yi Shiwen's big hand fiercely collided with the sword light in the void, and the sky suddenly shattered, as if the universe was collapsing and the sky was collapsing. The scene was extremely horrifying, and ordinary people would not be able to imagine this kind of horror. When this rumbling power fell on the valley below, endless divinities emerged and completely engulfed this power. Thump, thump, thump. In this chaotic situation, Yi Shiwen took a few steps back, and finally, this power was dissolved. His expression became more and more solemn, but there was no anger in his eyes, as if he had become a robot, and there was only coldness and ruthlessness in his eyes. He had already entered a state of clarity, and he was very clear that in the face of such a strong enemy, as long as there was a little miscalculation, he could die on the spot. Only by calculating everything could he have a chance to stall this enemy. But fortunately, after all, he had already entered the fourth sky of celestial realm, or else he would not even have the strength to fight. It's useless. In front of my strength, you are simply not enough. Yi Kuang was cold and ruthless, like a god. There was no arrogance, only the most straightforward self-confidence. His big hand grabbed toward the void, and suddenly, the void began to boil like water. And then many sword principles directly manifested on the spot, forming a kingdom of sword principles around his body. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. Yi Kuang's cultivation and understanding of swordsmanship were truly terrifying. Moreover, the most important thing was that Yi Kuang wasn't a sword cultivator. Even though he wasn't a sword cultivator, he was still able to comprehend swordsmanship to such an extent. He simply gave up on using sword techniques and directly manifested the laws of the way of the sword. Laws appeared in the void, and they were abnormally cryptic and profound. The scene looked extremely terrifying. I'd like to see to what extent you can withstand in my domain. Yi Kuang snorted coldly, and his big hand directly grabbed a sword principle, transforming it into a sharp sword that broke through the sky like lightning, and instantly threw it out. Swish! With a sharp piercing sound, this sharp sword formed by the sword principles immediately pierced through the sky, fiercely breaking through the vast sky, and headed towards Yi Shiwen's face. It was fast and urgent, as fast as lightning. In an instant, it had already broken through the void and directly chopped down. Yi Shiwen squinted his eyes and suddenly opened them. A violent power was running rampant in his body. He spread out his hands in front of him, and an inexhaustible Zhen Yuan formed a huge qi wall in front of him. It rose with a loud rumble and protected him in it. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.